I don't need your charity. The billionaire's hand froze mid-reach, wallet open, as the poor girl on the bicycle turned away from enough money to change her life. 30 minutes earlier, she'd saved him from losing everything. Now she was rejecting his gratitude like it meant nothing. What happened between that desperate ride through the city and this moment of refusal? Why would someone with nothing turn down everything? Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The Mercedes S-Class had not moved in 17 minutes. Ethan Calloway knew this because he had been watching the dashboard clock with the same intensity he usually reserved for quarterly earnings reports. Each digital minute that ticked over felt like another nail being driven into the coffin of Calloway Technology's future. Outside the tinted windows, Los Angeles traffic sat motionless under a brutally indifferent morning sun, stretching in both directions like a parking lot designed by fate itself. "How long?" Ethan asked, his voice carrying that particular edge that made junior executives check their resumes. Marcus, his driver of 8 years, knew better than to sugarcoat anything. "Police scanner says jackknifed semi near the 110 interchange. They're rerouting everything. We could be here another hour, maybe more." "I don't have an hour." Ethan's fingers drummed against the leather armrest, a rare external sign of the pressure building behind his carefully maintained composure. "I don't have 30 minutes. The merger meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock sharp. It was now 8:17, and they were still 4 miles from downtown. 4 miles might as well have been 40. The Yamamoto Group did not reschedule. The Yamamoto Group did not wait. The Yamamoto Group had already extended Ethan one courtesy by agreeing to meet on American soil instead of Tokyo, and that courtesy had cost Ethan 6 months of negotiation and concessions he still felt in his gut. This meeting was not just important, it was not just critical. It was the culmination of 3 years of work, the kind of deal that would either cement Callaway Technologies as a global leader in AI infrastructure or leave them vulnerable to being acquired by someone with less vision and more patience. And Ethan Callaway was about to miss it because of a truck full of produce and the laws of physics. There has to be another route. Ethan leaned forward, as if proximity to the front seat might somehow solve the problem. Something. Anything. Marcus gestured at the gridlock. Every lane was packed. Cars sat bumper to bumper, their drivers either slumped in defeat or honking in futile protest at a situation no amount of noise could fix. "Boss, I've tried 3 different GPS apps. They all say the same thing. The whole system's locked up. It's not just us, it's everyone." Ethan pulled out his phone and scrolled through the cascade of messages already piling up. His executive assistant, Jennifer, had sent 4 increasingly urgent texts. The legal team needed final approval on 2 contract amendments. The Yamamoto representatives had arrived early and were already in the building. His CFO wanted to know if they should stall, and if so, how long they could possibly maintain credibility while doing it. The last message was from his daughter's nanny. "Have a great day, Daddy. Lily says good luck with your big meeting. She drew you a picture." The attached image showed a crayon drawing of a man in a suit, supposedly him, standing victoriously on top of a building while stick-figure crowds cheered below. In the corner, written in an adult's handwriting because Lily was only 6 and still learning letters, "You can do anything." Something twisted in Ethan's chest. The irony was not lost on him. He could negotiate billion-dollar deals, restructure entire companies, and predict market movements with unsettling accuracy. But he could not make traffic move. He could not bend time. And he was about to disappoint not just his investors and his board, but also the little girl who thought her father was capable of anything. "I'm getting out," Ethan said suddenly. Marcus turned around, confusion creasing his weathered face. "Sir?" "I'll walk, run if I have to." Ethan was already reaching for the door handle, his mind shifting into crisis mode. 4 miles was doable. Difficult in a suit and Italian leather shoes, but doable. He ran 3 miles every morning before Lily woke up. He could make 4 in under an hour if he pushed. "Mr. Calloway, with all respect, you'll show up drenched in sweat and—" "I'll show up," Ethan interrupted. "That's what matters." He stepped out of the car into the surprising heat of the morning. September in Los Angeles was supposed to be mild, but today felt like the city was running a fever. The air tasted like exhaust and frustration. Around him, other drivers sat in their vehicles, some watching him with the blank curiosity of people who had given up on their own destinations and now lived vicariously through anyone still trying. Ethan loosened his tie, checked his watch, 8:19 now, and started walking between the rows of stopped cars. His mind was already calculating. 10-minute miles would get him there by 9:10, assuming he didn't stop. That was 10 minutes late. Unacceptable but survivable if Jennifer could stretch the preliminary small talk. He was so focused on his mental math that he almost did not notice the bicycle. It appeared beside him like something from a different reality, weaving between the motionless cars with a grace that seemed to mock their mechanical helplessness. The rider was young, probably mid-20s, wearing jeans and a faded blue t-shirt that had clearly seen too many wash cycles. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she rode with the easy confidence of someone who had been navigating city streets since before she could drive. The bicycle itself looked like it had a story, 1,000 stories. The frame was old but well-maintained, painted a color that might have once been red but had faded to something closer to rust. The back rack held a worn canvas backpack secured with bungee cords, and attached to the handlebars was a small rearview mirror that had been repaired with electrical tape. She slowed as she passed him, then stopped entirely, one foot on the ground for balance. Up close, Ethan could see the details that separated her from his usual world. The frayed edges of her jeans, the sneakers that had been carefully patched with fabric glue, the way her shirt collar was slightly worn from repeated folding. But what struck him most were her eyes, sharp, assessing, and surprisingly kind. "You lost?" she asked. Her voice had a practical directness that suggested she did not waste time on unnecessary words. "No," Ethan said reflexively. Then because the situation was already absurd. "Yes, maybe. I need to get downtown, corporate district, the Yamamoto building." The girl glanced at the traffic, then back at him. "Yeah, you're not getting there in a car anytime soon. Semi-jackknifed on the interchange. They're saying 2 hours minimum before this clears." "I don't have 2 hours." The admission felt like defeat. She studied him with an intensity that made Ethan strangely self-conscious. He was used to being looked at. You did not build a tech empire in your 30s without becoming somewhat recognizable, but this was different. She was not looking at his net worth or his influence. She was looking at him like he was a problem to be solved. "How important is it?" she asked. "Very." Like, miss it and your day's ruined important, or miss it and your life changes important? Ethan felt a strange urge to laugh at the simplicity of the question. "The second one." The girl seemed to make a decision. She gestured to the back of her bicycle, where a small metal rack extended behind the seat. "I can get you there." Ethan looked at the bicycle, then at her, then back at the bicycle. For several seconds, his brain simply refused to process the suggestion. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I know these streets better than any GPS. All the service alleys, the bike paths, the shortcuts that cars can't use. If we leave right now, I can have you downtown in 25 minutes. Maybe less. On a bicycle." "On my bicycle, yeah." She said it with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to someone who should already know better. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. The image was too absurd. Ethan Callaway, CEO of Callaway Technologies, showing up to the most important meeting of his career having arrived on the back of a stranger's bicycle, like some kind of lost tourist. The board would hear about it, the investors would hear about it. Someone would inevitably take a photo, and it would become one of those quirky business school anecdotes about the time a billionaire hitched a ride with a poor girl. But beneath the instinctive resistance, his analytical mind was already running the numbers. 25 minutes would get him there at 8:45, 15 minutes early. Time to compose himself, review his notes, maybe even change the shirt that was already starting to stick to his back in the heat. The alternative was walking 4 miles in dress shoes and hoping his knees held up. "Why would you do this?" Ethan asked, suspicious of generosity he had not earned. In his experience, nothing came without a price. The girl shrugged, the gesture somehow managing to be both casual and definitive. "Because you need help, and I can provide it. That's how things should work, right?" It was such a simple answer that it almost sounded naive, but there was nothing naive about the way she was looking at him. She knew exactly what she was offering and to whom. She just did not seem to care about the implications in the way Ethan's world had taught him to care about everything. He looked at his watch again. 8:21. Okay, Ethan heard himself say. Let's do it. The girl unstrapped a spare helmet from her backpack, a lightweight thing that looked like it had survived at least one crash, and handed it to him. You ever ridden on a bike before? Not since I was 12. Just keep your feet on the pegs and don't lean too hard into the turns. Let me do the balancing. She swung her leg over the seat and patted the rear rack. Hop on. Ethan looked around at the surrounding cars. A few drivers were watching now, clearly entertained by whatever they thought they were witnessing. He imagined what Marcus must be thinking from somewhere in the gridlock behind them. Then he stopped imagining and started moving. He positioned himself on the rack, which was far less comfortable than the leather seats he was accustomed to, and gripped the edges carefully. The metal was warm from the sun and slightly rough under his palms. The girl glanced back at him. You good? Defined good. She smiled, quick and bright, like sun breaking through clouds. Hold on, corporate man. And then they were moving. The first few seconds were terrifying. Ethan's entire sense of control evaporated as the bicycle wobbled slightly under his added weight, and he had to resist every instinct that screamed at him to jump off and return to the safety of predictable failure. But the girl adjusted quickly, her legs pumping with steady, practiced strength, and within moments they had found a rhythm. She steered them between the stopped cars, navigating gaps that seemed impossibly narrow, but somehow accommodated them. The world that had felt so stuck suddenly became fluid again. They passed sedans and SUVs and even a tour bus full of people who would probably be sitting there for another hour. The frustration on those faces made Ethan realize how close he had been to wearing the same expression. My name's Daisy, by the way, the girl called back over her shoulder. Figured you should know who's saving your ass. Ethan, he replied, then added, because old habits died hard. Ethan Calloway. Nice to meet you, Ethan. She took a sharp right turn onto a side street Ethan had never noticed before, and suddenly they were out of the traffic entirely, riding through a quieter part of the city where the buildings were shorter and the air smelled like bread from a nearby bakery. This was not the Los Angeles Ethan knew. He had lived in this city for 15 years, but he had only ever experienced it through the windows of luxury vehicles and the upper floors of high-rise offices. Down here, at street level, on the back of Daisy's bicycle, everything looked different. Smaller businesses, hand-painted signs, people sitting on stoops drinking coffee and talking to neighbors. You do this often? Ethan asked as Daisy navigated around a produce truck making a delivery. Rescue desperate businessmen? First time, actually. She laughed, a sound that seemed too light for someone carrying another person's entire weight on the back of an ancient bicycle. Usually I'm just trying to get to work on time, but you looked like you needed it more than I needed to clock in early. You're going to be late because of me. I'm always late. My boss is used to it. The way she said it suggested this was not quite true, but she was choosing to believe it anyway. They turned onto another alley, this one barely wide enough for the bicycle. Graffiti covered the walls in layers, some of it artistic, some of it angry, all of it evidence of lives being lived in ways Ethan never thought about. A man hosing down the sidewalk in front of a restaurant waved at Daisy as they passed, and she waved back like they were old friends. How do you know all these routes? Ethan asked. I've been biking in this city for 8 years. When you can't afford a car and the bus is unreliable, you learn the shortcuts. You learn which streets have the worst potholes, which neighborhoods have dogs that chase bikes, where the cops hang out and where they don't. She hopped the bike up onto a sidewalk ramp with practiced ease. You learn the city like it's a living thing, because for people like me, it kind of is. People like me. The phrase hung in the air between them, carrying implications Ethan was not quite ready to examine. He was very aware suddenly of the contrast between them, his tailored suit and her patched sneakers, his leather briefcase and her canvas backpack, his luxury sedan stuck in traffic somewhere behind them, and her bicycle that probably cost less than one of his watches. They emerged onto a wider street, and Daisy picked up speed, her legs pumping faster now. Ethan could feel the strain in the bike frame, the way it flexed slightly under their combined weight. This thing was not built for 2 people, and Daisy was working twice as hard to keep them moving. You okay? He asked, feeling guilty for the first time about accepting her help. I'm fine. We're making good time. But Ethan could hear the slightly breathless quality in her voice, the edge of exertion she was trying to hide. They passed a laundromat where an elderly woman was folding clothes, a corner store with produce displays spilling onto the sidewalk, a small park where a group of kids were already playing despite the early hour. This was a Los Angeles of working people, of families making do, of communities built on proximity and necessity rather than choice and wealth. Ethan had driven through neighborhoods like this 1,000 times without really seeing them. Now, forced into closeness by circumstance and an uncomfortable bicycle seat, he could not look away. "What do you do?" Daisy asked, breaking his thoughts. "For work, I mean. Must be something pretty important." "I run a tech company. We build AI infrastructure for large-scale applications." The description came automatically, polished from countless investor pitches. Uh-huh. Daisy's tone suggested she understood approximately none of that. "And this meeting you're racing to?" "A merger. If it goes through, it'll expand our operations into Asian markets and increase our valuation by about 40%. "How much money is that?" "A lot." "Like, buy a house a lot? Or buy a yacht a lot?" Ethan almost laughed. Closer to the second one. "Huh." Daisy took another turn, this one onto a dedicated bike path that ran alongside a concrete drainage channel. The path was smooth and empty, and she accelerated, the wind picking up around them. "Must be nice dealing with money like that." "It's stressful." "Yeah, but it's rich people stressful. That's different than regular stressful." "Is it?" Ethan asked, genuinely curious despite himself. "Rich people stressful is worrying about whether your company makes billions or just millions. Regular stressful is worrying about whether you can pay rent and buy groceries in the same week." She said it without bitterness, just as a statement of fact. "Don't get me wrong, I'm sure your stress is real. But at the end of the day, you're probably not going to end up homeless if this meeting goes bad." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She was right, of course. Even if the merger fell through, even if Callaway Technologies somehow collapsed entirely, Ethan would still have enough in personal assets to live comfortably for the rest of his life. The stakes were professional, not existential. For Daisy, he suspected, the stakes were always existential. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you do?" "Whatever pays." Daisy's answer was cheerful but practiced, the response of someone who had learned to package multiple truths into convenient phrases. "Right now, I work mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons at a tutoring center, and some evenings I do deliveries for a local restaurant. Keeps me busy." "That's 3 jobs. 4 if you count the weekend farmers market, but that one's seasonal." She said it like it was normal, like everyone she knew worked 4 jobs to stay afloat. "That must be exhausting." "You get used to it, and honestly, I like staying busy. Gives me less time to think about all the things I'm not doing with my life." The joke in her voice could not quite hide the truth underneath it. They rode in silence for a while after that, the only sounds the whir of the bicycle chain and the ambient noise of the city waking up around them. Ethan found himself studying Daisy's back, the way her shoulders moved with each push of the pedals, the determined set of her spine. She was carrying him, literally carrying him, towards something that mattered to him while delaying her own obligations, and she was doing it with a grace that felt almost foreign in its simplicity. When was the last time someone had helped him without wanting something in return? When was the last time he had accepted help without immediately calculating its cost? The financial district started appearing ahead of them, glass towers rising like monuments to accumulated capital. Ethan recognized the skyline from this angle, but it looked different from ground level, less impressive somehow. From the back of Daisy's bicycle, those buildings seemed less like achievements and more like just buildings. "Almost there," Daisy announced, and Ethan could hear the relief in her voice. She was tired. Of course she was tired. She had just biked 4 miles while carrying an extra 180 pounds. "Daisy," Ethan started, not sure what he wanted to say. "Thank you, really. You saved my—" "Don't thank me yet," she interrupted. "Save it for when you're actually inside the building on time." But Ethan could already see the Yamamoto building rising ahead of them, its distinctive blue glass facade reflecting the morning sun. They were going to make it. Against every reasonable expectation, they were actually going to make it. Daisy navigated the last few blocks with the same steady confidence she had shown throughout the ride, weaving through the early morning pedestrians and delivery trucks. When they finally pulled up in front of the building's main entrance, Ethan's watch read 8:43. 17 minutes to spare. He climbed off the bicycle, his legs shaky from the unfamiliar position and the adrenaline that had been sustaining him. Daisy remained seated, one foot on the ground for balance, breathing harder than she probably wanted to admit. "See?" she said between breaths. "Told you I could get you here." "You did." Ethan removed the helmet and handed it back to her. His hair was probably a mess, and he definitely needed a moment to compose himself before walking into that building, but he was here. "I don't know how to thank you properly for this." Daisy waved off his words like they were unnecessary. "You just did." But Ethan was already reaching for his wallet, pulling it from his inner jacket pocket. This, at least, was something he understood. A problem with a solution. He extracted $500 bills, more than generous for 25 minutes of transportation, but less than what her help was actually worth to him, and held them out. "For your time," he said, "and for being late to work because of me." Daisy looked at the money, then at his face, and something shifted in her expression. The easy friendliness cooled into something more guarded. "I don't need your charity," she said quietly. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. "It's not charity. It's payment for services rendered. You got me here when I had no other options. And I did it because you needed help, not because I wanted to get paid." Daisy's voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath it. "You keep your money, corporate man. Put it towards something that matters." "This matters," Ethan insisted, confused by her refusal. In his world, everything had a price. Everything could be compensated. I deserve to help somebody without it becoming a transaction." Daisy cut him off, not unkindly, but firmly. "I deserve to do something good without someone trying to turn it into a business deal." They stood there in front of the Yamamoto building, separated by $500 and a fundamental difference in how they understood the world. Ethan felt like he had somehow offended her by offering money, while she looked at him with something that might have been disappointment or might have been pity. "At least let me," Ethan started, but Daisy was already shaking her head. "You want to thank me? Really thank me?" She gestured at the building behind him. "Go in there and do whatever it is you're supposed to do. Win your merger or whatever. Make your billions. And maybe someday when someone else is in trouble and you're the only one who can help them, remember that helping doesn't always need a price tag." She pushed off before Ethan could respond, pedaling away from the curb with the same easy grace she had shown throughout their ride. He watched her disappear into the morning traffic, this young woman on an old bicycle who had saved his future and refused to be rewarded for it. Ethan stood there for a long moment, the $500 still in his hand, feeling strangely unbalanced. Then he checked his watch, 8:45 now, and forced himself to shift mental gears. The meeting. The merger. The reason he was here. He straightened his tie, ran his fingers through his hair, and walked into the building with the practiced confidence of someone who always knew where they were going and why. The lobby was all marble and chrome, the kind of aggressive luxury meant to intimidate and impress. Security recognized him and waved him through. The elevator was waiting. Everything was back to normal. Except it was not normal. Not quite. As Ethan rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor, he could still feel the echo of that bicycle ride. The strange intimacy of being carried by a stranger through parts of his own city he had never really seen. He could still hear Daisy's voice. "People like me." The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor where Jennifer was waiting with his briefcase and a look of profound relief. "Mr. Calloway, thank God. I was about to start faking a fire alarm." She handed him the briefcase and a breath mint. "The Yamamoto team is in conference room A. They seem pleased to be early. Did you run here?" "Something like that," Ethan said, accepting the mint. "Give me 2 minutes to use the restroom, then we go in." In the executive washroom, Ethan splashed cold water on his face and studied his reflection. He looked the same as he always did before big meetings, focused, composed, ready to win. But something in his eyes was different. Something had shifted during that ride, some fundamental assumption about how the world worked and who held power in it. "I deserve to help somebody without it becoming a transaction." Ethan dried his hands, adjusted his collar one last time, and walked out to meet his future. The conference room was everything his morning had not been. Controlled, predictable, expensive. The Yamamoto representative stood as he entered, bowing slightly, in the formal Japanese business style Ethan had learned to mirror. The team consisted of 3 men, Yamamoto senior executives, and 1 woman who served as their primary translator despite speaking perfect English. "Mr. Calloway," the eldest of them said, "we are pleased you could join us." "The pleasure is mine, Yamamoto-san. Thank you for your patience with the traffic situation." "Ah, yes. We heard about the incident on the highway. Quite unfortunate." The man's expression was carefully neutral, revealing nothing about whether Ethan's close call had been noticed or would be held against him. They sat. Documents were distributed. The dance of high-stakes negotiation began with its familiar rhythms. The careful language, the strategic pauses, the subtle shifts in position that meant everything to those trained to notice them. But Ethan found himself distracted in ways he rarely allowed. His attention kept drifting to the window, where he could see the city sprawling below. Somewhere down there, Daisy was probably at her coffee shop job now, making lattes for people who did not know her name, working her first of 4 jobs. Getting by. "Mr. Calloway?" The translator's voice pulled him back. "Yamamoto-san asks if you have reviewed the modifications to Section 12? Ethan had. Of course he had. He had practically memorized the entire contract over the past month. "Yes. I believe the language adequately addresses both parties' concerns about IP sharing in the Chinese market." The meeting continued, hours compressed into the intense focus of negotiation. Ethan had always been good at this, reading rooms, finding leverage, knowing when to push and when to yield. But today, something was different. He found himself listening more than talking, asking questions instead of making declarations, treating the Yamamoto team less like opponents to be defeated and more like partners to be understood. At one point, the youngest of the Yamamoto executives raised a concern about the timeline for technology transfer. In the old version of himself, the one from before this morning, Ethan would have met that concern with data and projections, overwhelming it with confidence and certainty. Instead, he found himself saying, "That's a valid concern. We have been ambitious with the timeline. What would feel more reasonable to you?" The room went quiet for a moment. Then the young executive offered a counter-proposal that was actually quite sensible, and Ethan found himself agreeing to it with minimal resistance. The modification made the deal slightly less favorable to Callaway Technologies in the short term, but it strengthened the partnership in ways that would matter more in the long run. By the time they broke for lunch, Ethan could feel a shift in the room's energy. The Yamamoto team was more relaxed, more willing to engage in the casual conversation that built trust between business partners. The eldest executive even smiled, briefly, when discussing his grandson's interest in computer programming. Jennifer pulled Ethan aside during the break. "What's different about you today?" "What do you mean?" "You're negotiating differently, less aggressive, more collaborative." She studied his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Did something happen this morning?" "I took an unusual route to get here," Ethan said, which was true even if it was not the whole truth. The afternoon session went even better than the morning. By 4 o'clock, they had addressed every major concern and were down to final language adjustments. By 5:30, they were shaking hands on a deal that would transform both companies. "We are very pleased with this outcome," Yamamoto-san said through his translator, though Ethan suspected the man understood English better than he let on. "We look forward to a long and prosperous partnership." "As do I," Ethan replied, and meant it more than he usually did when he said such things. After the Yamamoto team left, Jennifer and the rest of Ethan's staff erupted in relieved celebration. They had done it. Against all odds, against traffic and timing and the sheer complexity of international business law, they had actually done it. "We should celebrate," Jennifer said. "Dinner at Maestro's? We can get the private room." "You all go ahead," Ethan surprised himself by saying. "I have something I need to do." "Sir?" "I'll join you later, maybe. Save me a seat just in case." He left the building while his team was still debating restaurant reservations, stepping out into the early evening air. The traffic had cleared. The crisis that had consumed the morning now felt like it had happened in a different lifetime. Ethan could have called Marcus to pick him up. He could have walked the 3 blocks to his parking garage where his backup car, because of course he had a backup car, was waiting. Instead, He started walking in the direction Daisy had disappeared that morning. He did not have a plan, exactly. He just knew that the day did not feel finished. The victory in the conference room felt hollow somehow, incomplete. He had won his merger, secured his company's future, proven once again that Ethan Callaway was a force to be reckoned with in the tech industry. But he had not thanked Daisy properly. He had not found a way to honor what she had done for him that transcended simple payment. The city looked different at this hour. The harsh morning light had softened into golden evening, and the streets were full of people heading home from work. Ethan walked among them, probably the only person in a $3,000 suit traveling on foot through this neighborhood, but nobody seemed to care. He passed the corner store he had seen from Daisy's bicycle. The produce was being brought inside now, the day's business winding down. 2 doors down was a small coffee shop with hand-painted signage, roses, coffee, and more. Ethan almost kept walking, but something made him stop and look through the window. There, behind the counter, was Daisy. She was wearing a brown apron over her t-shirt, her hair still in the same ponytail, moving with practiced efficiency between the espresso machine and the register. A line of customers waited patiently while she made their drinks, and Ethan could see her smiling at each of them, making small talk, remembering names and usual orders. He pushed open the door, the bell chimed. Daisy looked up, and her expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pleasure before settling on amused resignation. "Corporate man," she said. "You win your merger?" "I did." "Good for you." She finished the latte she was making and handed it to an elderly man who thanked her in Spanish. Then she looked at Ethan expectantly. "You want coffee, or are you here for something else?" "I'm here to say thank you," Ethan said, properly this time. "I told you, I know. You don't need my money. You don't want charity." Ethan stepped closer to the counter, very aware that other customers were watching this exchange with interest. "But I need to do something. You saved more than just my meeting this morning. You saved something I did not know needed saving." Daisy tilted her head, studying him. "What does that mean?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," Ethan admitted. "But I think you reminded me that the world is bigger than my conference rooms and my quarterly reports, that there are people out there working 4 jobs and still finding room to help strangers for no reason except that it's the right thing to do." "Okay, now you're being dramatic," Daisy said, but she was smiling. "I gave you a bike ride, not a kidney." "Next customer," someone called from behind Ethan, reminding him that he was holding up a line. "Order something or move," Daisy suggested, her smile widening. "You're killing my throughput." Ethan stepped to the register. "What do you recommend?" "The house blend is good, but you look like an espresso guy." "Double espresso, then." Daisy rang him up, $4.50, which Ethan paid with a 5 and told her to keep the change. She rolled her eyes but took it, then set about making his drink with the same focused efficiency she had shown while navigating city traffic. When she handed him the small cup, their fingers brushed briefly. "Try not to save the world with it," she said. "I'll do my best." Ethan took a sip. It was excellent coffee, better than what he paid $12 for near his office. "What time do you get off work?" "Why? You planning to offer me a job or something?" "Would you take it if I did?" "Hell no." Daisy laughed. "I've got enough bosses already. Don't need to add a billionaire to the collection." "I'm not a billionaire." "Yet." "Fair point." Ethan finished his espresso in 2 more sips, feeling the caffeine hit his system. "What if I just wanted to buy you dinner, as a thank you that doesn't involve handing you cash? That's still basically paying me, just with extra steps. What if I promised it would be terrible dinner, like truly bad pizza from a place with health code violations?" Daisy laughed again, the sound bright in the small coffee shop. Some of the other customers were definitely listening now, not even pretending to look at their phones. "You're weird, corporate man." "Ethan," he reminded her. "My name is Ethan." "I know what your name is. I just like calling you corporate man. It fits you." She wiped down the counter, considering. "I get off at 6. There's a taco truck 2 blocks from here that definitely has health code violations. Meet me there if you actually mean it." "I'll be there," Ethan said. And he was. The taco truck was exactly as questionable as Daisy had promised. It sat on a corner lot that looked like it had once been something else, maybe a gas station, maybe a small market, and was now just cracked asphalt and chain-link fence. The truck itself was painted a faded yellow with hand-lettered red text that read, "El Gordo's Tacos." And below that, in smaller letters, established 1997, probably. A propane tank sat exposed on one side, and the smell of grilled meat and onions drifted out in waves that made Ethan's stomach growl despite the expensive lunch he'd had catered during the merger negotiations. Daisy was already there, leaning against the chain-link fence with her bicycle propped beside her. She'd changed out of her coffee shop apron, but was still wearing the same faded jeans and t-shirt from that morning. When she saw Ethan approaching, she pushed off from the fence with a grin. "You actually showed up," she said. "I had you pegged as a 50-50 chance of bailing once you remembered you're rich and important. I said I'd be here." Ethan looked at the taco truck with what he hoped was an expression of enthusiasm rather than concern. "This is the place?" "Best tacos in a 6-block radius. Also the only tacos in a 6-block radius, but that's beside the point." Daisy walked up to the service window where a man with a spectacular mustache and a grease-stained apron was already grinning at her. "Hey, Gordo, 2 al pastor, extra cilantro, and whatever this guy wants." This guy looked at the handwritten menu board hanging inside the window. The options were surprisingly extensive for a questionable taco truck, ranging from standard carne asada to something called the Gringo Special that Ethan suspected was meant as either a joke or a dare. "I'll have the same," Ethan said, figuring that following Daisy's lead had worked out well enough so far. Gordo looked at him with the kind of assessment that suggested he was used to evaluating whether customers could handle his food. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded and turned to his grill without further comment. "So," Daisy said, leading Ethan to a pair of plastic chairs that had been set up near the truck, "how does it feel to be a merger winner? You wake up this morning, stuck in traffic, thinking your life was over, and now you're sitting pretty with your billion-dollar deal." 40% increase in valuation, Ethan corrected automatically. "Not quite a billion-dollar deal." "Oh, excuse me. Only 900 million or whatever. My mistake." Daisy's sarcasm was gentle, almost affectionate. "I'm sure that must be very disappointing for you." Ethan sat in the plastic chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. "It's strange, actually. I spent 3 years working toward this merger. 3 years of negotiations and planning and anxiety, and now that it's done, I just feel tired." "That's because you're crashing. Adrenaline dump." Daisy stretched her legs out in front of her, crossing them at the ankles. "Happens to me whenever I finish a double shift. You spend all this time running on fumes and stress, and then when you finally stop, your body remembers it's supposed to be exhausted. Is that what you're feeling now? Exhausted?" "Always." She said it lightly, but Ethan heard the truth underneath. "But it's a good kind of tired, the kind that means I worked for what I've got, even if what I've got isn't much." Gordo called out from the window, and Daisy jumped up to collect their food. She returned with 2 paper plates loaded with tacos that looked almost obscenely delicious. Charred pork piled high with pineapple, cilantro, and onions, with lime wedges balanced precariously on the side. "Fair warning," Daisy said as she handed Ethan his plate. "These are going to ruin every other taco you've ever had. Gordo's secret is he doesn't give a damn about health codes, which means he uses the right amount of fat and char and all the things fancy restaurants are too scared to try." Ethan took a bite. Flavor exploded across his tongue. Smoky, spicy, sweet, acidic, all at once. Daisy was watching him with barely concealed amusement. "Told you," she said. "These are incredible," Ethan admitted, already reaching for his second taco. "Why isn't this place famous?" "Because fame requires marketing, and Gordo thinks marketing is for sellouts. He's been in the same spot for 27 years, serving the same neighborhood, and he's perfectly happy with that." Daisy squeezed lime over her taco. "Not everyone's trying to expand into Asian markets and increase their valuation." "Fair point." Ethan ate in silence for a moment, watching the street. Evening foot traffic was picking up, people coming home from work, kids playing on the sidewalk, a group of teenagers arguing good-naturedly about something in rapid-fire Spanish. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. No guarantee I'll answer." "Why did you help me this morning? Really? You could have just ridden past. You could have said it wasn't your problem. But you stopped." Daisy considered the question while she finished her taco. "You know what I noticed about you when I first saw you walking between those cars? That I was wildly out of place. That you were trying to control a situation you had no control over. She wiped her hands on a napkin. I see that look a lot on people's faces in this city. Everyone's always trying to force things to go the way they planned, and then they fall apart when reality doesn't cooperate. But you, corporate man, you looked like you were about to have a breakdown, and I just thought, I can help with that. I can actually solve this problem. So why wouldn't I? Most people wouldn't. Most people are scared of strangers. Most people assume that everyone wants something from them. Daisy met his eyes directly. And maybe they're right to think that. But I don't know. I guess I still believe that sometimes people can just be decent to each other without it being complicated. That's remarkably optimistic for someone working 4 jobs. 3.5 jobs, Daisy corrected with a smile. The farmer's market gig is seasonal, remember? And yeah, maybe I'm stupid for being optimistic. But the alternative is assuming everyone's terrible, and that just sounds exhausting. A small boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, appeared at Daisy's elbow. He was wearing a backpack that looked too big for his frame and holding a crumpled dollar bill. Daisy, he said, his face lighting up. Are you tutoring tomorrow? Hey, Miguel. Yeah, I'll be at the center from 3 to 6. You working on that long division? Miguel made a face. It's so boring. Most useful things are boring. That's how you know they're worth learning. Daisy ruffled his hair affectionately. Go get your taco. Tell Gordo I said to give you extra meat. The boy ran off toward the truck, and Daisy watched him go with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Fondness, certainly, but also something that looked like worry. One of your students? Ethan asked. Yeah, smart kid. His mom works nights at a hotel, so he's on his own a lot after school. The tutoring center gives him somewhere to be that isn't the street. She turned back to Ethan. That's the other reason I stopped for you this morning. I spend most of my time helping people who can't do anything for me in return. It felt good to help someone who actually could achieve something with the time I gave them. Like maybe all those resources you've got might get used for something worthwhile. No pressure or anything, Ethan said, but he was smiling. Hey, you asked why I helped. I'm just being honest. Daisy finished her second taco and started on her third. So what about you? What's your story? How does someone end up running a tech company and making $900 million deals before they're what, 40? 37, and it's the usual story. Worked hard, got lucky, worked harder, got luckier. Ethan surprised himself by continuing. I built the company from nothing 12 years ago. Just me and my college roommate and a crazy idea about making AI infrastructure more efficient. We maxed out our credit cards, lived on ramen, did all the stupid startup things you're supposed to do. Eventually it worked. The company grew. My roommate cashed out 5 years ago and bought a vineyard in Napa. I kept going. Why? Why what? Why keep going? If you made enough money that your business partner could buy a vineyard, you probably made enough to stop. So why didn't you? It was a simple question, but Ethan found himself struggling to answer it. I suppose I never thought about stopping. The company is what I do. It's who I am. That sounds lonely. I have a daughter, Ethan said, defensive without quite knowing why. Lily, she's 6. She's the most important thing in my life. But you almost missed the biggest meeting of your career because of traffic, Daisy pointed out gently, which means you were cutting it pretty close on time, which means you probably left her pretty early this morning to get to that meeting. I always have breakfast with her before school. Always. Even as Ethan said it, he remembered this morning's rushed meal. Lily chattering about her upcoming field trip while Ethan's mind was already at the merger table. He'd heard maybe half of what she'd said. I'm not judging, Daisy said. Single-parent life is hard. I watched my mom do it with me and my brother. There's never enough time, never enough money, never enough of you to go around. I get it. What happened to your dad? Left when I was 9, sent birthday cards for a few years, then stopped even doing that. Daisy said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Mom worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. I started working at 14, under-the-table stuff mostly. By the time I graduated high school, I was already supporting myself. Mom got sick when I was 22. Cancer. She fought for 3 years before it took her. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Daisy's voice was steady, but Ethan could see the old grief in her eyes. She was a good person, deserved better than she got, but she taught me that you can be broke and still be rich in the ways that matter. Corny, I know, but it's true. Your brother? Ethan asked. You mentioned him earlier. Danny, he's 19, trying to figure out college while working part-time at a warehouse. Smart kid, but he's had a rough go of it. Got mixed up with some bad people for a while after Mom died. I pulled him out of that, got him focused on school. Daisy's expression hardened slightly. He's why I work so hard. Someone's got to pay for his books and make sure he eats something besides instant noodles. Miguel returned from the taco truck, his mouth already full of food. He waved at Daisy and ran off to join a group of other kids on the sidewalk. Their laughter carried across the parking lot, high and unselfconscious. You're good with kids, Ethan observed. I like kids. They're honest. They don't pretend to be something they're not. Daisy wadded up her napkins and tossed them toward a nearby trash can, making the shot cleanly. What about your daughter? What's she like? Ethan felt himself smile, the way he always did when thinking about Lily. She's extraordinary, funny and fearless, and completely convinced that anything is possible if you just try hard enough. She wants to be an astronaut and a veterinarian and a professional ice skater, possibly all at the same time. Ambitious. Wonder where she gets that. Her mother, probably. Ethan's smile faded slightly. Sarah was the dreamer in our relationship. I was always the practical one, the one doing the math and managing the risks. She was the one who believed in impossible things. Was? Daisy asked quietly. She died 4 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. Ethan was surprised at how easily he said it. He usually avoided talking about Sarah, especially with strangers. But something about sitting in a questionable parking lot eating street tacos made honesty feel easier. 1 minute she was dropping Lily off at preschool, and the next minute she was gone, just like that. God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. Lily doesn't really remember her. She was only 2. Sometimes I don't know if that makes it easier or harder. Ethan stared at his empty plate. I have all these memories of Sarah, and Lily has almost none. It feels unfair. Life usually is, Daisy said. Then after a pause, You doing okay? As a dad, I mean, raising her on your own. I'm trying. I have help, a nanny, tutors, the best schools money can buy. But none of that is the same as actually being there. Ethan thought about Lily's drawing from this morning, the stick figure version of him standing victorious on top of a building. Sometimes I worry that she's growing up with a father who's more of an idea than a person, someone she sees at breakfast and dinner, but who's never really present. You showed up for tacos tonight instead of celebrating with your team, Daisy pointed out. That counts for something. Does it? Or am I just feeling guilty about almost missing the meeting and looking for someone to absolve me? Daisy laughed, surprising him. Man, you really do overthink everything, don't you? Corporate man, listen to me. You can analyze this to death, or you can just accept that you did something decent tonight. You showed up. You're having a conversation. You're thinking about whether you're a good dad, which is more than a lot of dads do. Give yourself a break. Is that your professional opinion as a street taco therapist? Exactly. And my rates are very reasonable. Just the cost of dinner, which you already bought. Daisy stood and stretched, her joints popping audibly. Come on, walk with me. Where are we going? Does it matter? Ethan considered the question. He had emails waiting, calls to return, people expecting him at that celebration dinner. But Daisy was right. None of it actually mattered. Not tonight. I suppose it doesn't, he said, standing. They walked through the neighborhood as evening deepened into night. Daisy pushed her bicycle beside her, occasionally greeting people they passed with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged here. She showed Ethan shortcuts through alleys and small parks, the same hidden routes she'd used that morning to navigate around the traffic. This is my Los Angeles, Daisy said, as they walked through a small plaza where families were gathering for some kind of outdoor movie night. Not the one you see in postcards or travel guides, just the real version where real people live. It's beautiful, Ethan said, and meant it. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes it smells weird, but yeah, it's beautiful. Daisy led him down another side street. You know what I think your problem is, corporate man? I wasn't aware I had a problem. Everyone has problems. Yours is that you've spent so long looking at spreadsheets and graphs and big picture strategic planning that you forgot about the ground level stuff. The real stuff. The real stuff, Ethan repeated, like street tacos and bicycle rides. Exactly like that. Like knowing your neighbors' names and which bodega has the best coffee and what time the kids get out of school so you can avoid the sidewalk rush. Daisy stopped at a corner and pointed down the street. See that house with the blue door? Mrs. Chen lives there. She's 83 years old and makes dumplings every Sunday. She gives them away to anyone who stops by. Last week she gave me 2 dozen because she said I looked thin. Did you? Probably. I forget to eat sometimes when I'm busy. But that's not the point. The point is Mrs. Chen knows me. She cares. And I know her and I care back. That's community. That's the stuff you can't buy with all your merger money. They walked past a laundromat where a woman was folding clothes while her toddler slept in a stroller beside her. Past a corner store where teenagers were loitering with energy drinks and skateboards. Past a small church with a handwritten sign advertising free ESL classes on Tuesday nights. How long have you lived in this neighborhood? Ethan asked. 8 years. Moved here right after high school because the rent was cheap and it was close to my mom's place. Thought I'd save up and move somewhere nicer eventually, but Daisy shrugged. I guess I just never left. Turns out somewhere nicer isn't worth much if you don't know anybody there. You could still leave if you wanted to. Could I? Let's do the math, corporate man. I make about $32,000 a year across all my jobs combined. My rent is $1,400 a month, which is actually cheap for LA. Add in food, utilities, my bike maintenance, Danny's school expenses, and I'm basically breaking even every month. Some months I'm not even doing that. She said it without bitterness, just laying out facts. So no, I can't really leave. Not without leaving Danny behind, and that's not happening. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. $32,000 a year. He spent more than that on Lily's private school tuition. The watch on his wrist had cost almost half of Daisy's annual income, and he'd bought it without thinking twice. That doesn't seem fair, he said quietly. Welcome to reality. Population, everyone who isn't you. Daisy bumped his shoulder with hers, softening the words. But hey, I'm not complaining. I've got a roof over my head, food in my stomach, and a purpose. That's more than a lot of people have. They reached a small playground, empty now in the evening darkness. Daisy parked her bicycle and walked over to the swings, sitting down on one with the ease of someone who'd done this many times before. Ethan followed, settling onto the swing beside her. Lily loves swings, he said, pushing off slightly. She could spend hours out here if I let her. When's the last time you took her to a playground? Ethan tried to remember. Her nanny takes her to the park in our building most afternoons. It has very nice equipment, very safe. That's not what I asked. When's the last time you took her? The silence stretched between them, answer enough. You should fix that, Daisy said, not unkindly. Kids don't remember the nice equipment. They remember who pushed them on the swings. You sound like you're speaking from experience. My mom worked all the time, but she always made time for the playground, even when she was exhausted, even when she had a million other things to do. She'd push me on the swings and pretend to be amazed at how high I could go. Daisy smiled at the memory. I remember that more than I remember anything she bought me. Your mom sounds like she was remarkable. She was. She also died broke, exhausted, and 53 years old. Sometimes I wonder if she'd still be alive if she'd worked less and worried more about herself instead of us. Daisy's voice was soft. But then I remember the swings, and I think maybe she got it right anyway. They swung in silence for a while, the chains creaking rhythmically. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm went off and was quickly silenced. A dog barked. The city continued its endless evening soundtrack. Can I ask you something? Daisy said eventually. And you have to promise to answer honestly. Okay. Are you happy? The question hit Ethan like a physical thing. That's complicated. No, it's really not. Are you happy? Yes or no? Ethan thought about his penthouse apartment with its view of the city, his garage full of expensive cars, his company with its impressive valuation and bright future, his daughter who was growing up with every advantage money could buy. I'm successful, he said. That's not what I asked. I'm content. Still not what I asked. Ethan stopped swinging. No, I'm not happy. I don't think I've been happy since Sarah died. I've been busy, I've been productive, I've been successful, but happy? No. Why not? Because happiness feels irresponsible. Like if I let myself be happy, I'm somehow betraying Sarah's memory or failing Lily or not taking the business seriously enough. The words were spilling out now, truths Ethan had never said aloud. So I just keep working, keep building, keep achieving, because at least when I'm doing that, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. That sounds exhausting. It is, but the alternative is stopping, and I don't know what happens if I stop. Daisy reached over and grabbed his swing chain, stopping his motion. You know what happens if you stop? You get to breathe. You get to notice things. You get to be a person instead of a productivity machine. I have a daughter to support, a company to run, people depending on me. And you'll still have all that if you take a day off to go to the playground. You'll still have it if you eat tacos with strangers and walk through neighborhoods you've never seen before. Daisy let go of his chain. You'll still have it, Ethan, but you might also have something else, something that feels more like living. A notification buzzed on Ethan's phone. He ignored it. Your team's probably wondering where you are, Daisy observed. Probably, but they're smart people. They'll figure out how to celebrate without me. Look at you, being irresponsible. I'm a terrible influence. The best kind of terrible. Ethan pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to Jennifer. Something came up. Enjoy dinner without me. We'll celebrate tomorrow. Then he turned the phone face down in his lap. There. Now, I'm officially playing hooky for my own success. How does it feel? Terrifying, also kind of great. They stayed at the playground until full darkness settled over the city and the streetlights flickered on. Daisy told him stories about the neighborhood, which families had lived here for generations, which buildings had the best gossip, which kids were troublemakers, and which ones were going places. Ethan listened, fascinated by this entire world that existed just blocks from his corporate tower, but might as well have been on another planet for all he knew about it. Eventually, Daisy checked her own phone and swore softly. I need to get home. Danny's supposed to be studying for a test, which means he's definitely playing video games instead. Can I ask you one more thing before you go? Sure. Why are you being so nice to me? You could have just taken your money this morning and been done with it. You didn't have to give me a second chance, and you definitely didn't have to spend your evening showing me your neighborhood and asking me uncomfortable questions about my happiness. Daisy stood from the swing and stretched. Honestly, I don't really know. Maybe because you looked like you needed it. Maybe because I wanted to see if a guy with everything would actually show up for tacos like he promised. Maybe because it's nice to talk to someone who's not asking me for help or expecting me to fix their problems. I asked you for help this morning. That was different. That was practical. You needed a ride. I gave you a ride. She gestured at the playground, the neighborhood around them, the evening they'd shared. This is just two people having a conversation. No agenda, no transaction, just connection. Ethan stood too. I like that, the no agenda part. Yeah, me too. Daisy walked back to her bicycle and swung her leg over it. You know how to get back to civilization from here, corporate man? I'll figure it out. I'm resourceful when I need to be. Clearly. She put one foot on the pedal, ready to push off. Thanks for the tacos. Thank you for the conversation. Daisy smiled, that same bright expression from this morning that seemed to light up her whole face. You know, you're not as terrible as I expected a billionaire to be. Not a billionaire. Yet, she called back as she pedaled away, the words becoming an echo as she disappeared into the night. Ethan stood in the empty playground for a long time after she left, feeling the weight of the day settle over him like a blanket. This morning, he'd been stuck in traffic, desperate and panicked. Tonight, he was standing in a neighborhood he'd never noticed before, full of food he'd never tasted, having had conversations he'd never expected. Daisy was right. He had been living in spreadsheets and conference rooms, measuring his life in quarterly reports and market valuations. He had forgotten what it felt like to just exist without an agenda, to talk to someone without calculating what he could gain from the interaction. His phone buzzed again. This time he checked it. Jennifer had sent a photo from the celebration dinner. His entire team crowded around a table, raising champagne glasses toward the camera. They looked happy, successful, exactly like people who'd just closed a major merger should look. Ethan smiled at the photo, sent back a congratulatory message, and then pulled up his car service app. Within minutes, a black sedan appeared at the playground entrance. The driver looked confused about why someone in a $3,000 suit was standing alone in a children's playground at night, but he had the good sense not to ask questions. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked as Ethan settled into the back seat. Ethan almost gave his home address. Then he changed his mind. "The tutoring center on Maple Street. Do you know it?" The driver pulled it up on his GPS. "Yes, sir. About 15 minutes from here." As they drove through the city, Ethan looked out the window with new eyes. These streets weren't just obstacles between point A and point B anymore. They were Daisy's shortcuts and Miguel's neighborhood and Mrs. Chen's dumpling route. They were real places where real people lived real lives that had nothing to do with merger agreements or corporate valuations. The tutoring center was a modest building squeezed between a dry cleaner and a discount grocery store. Through the windows, Ethan could see a handful of kids working at tables while adult volunteers helped them with homework. It looked underfunded and overcrowded and absolutely vital. He had the driver wait while he went inside. The woman at the front desk looked up in surprise. She was probably in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and glasses on a chain around her neck. "Can I help you?" "I hope so. I'd like to make a donation." "Oh, how wonderful. Let me get you a form." "I don't need a form. I just need to know what you need." Ethan pulled out his checkbook, a relic he rarely used anymore in the age of digital transfers. What would make the biggest difference right now? The woman stared at him like he'd asked the question in a foreign language. "Sir, we have a donation process. You'd need to speak with our director, fill out the paperwork." "I understand. But right now, tonight, what would help?" She hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and opportunity. Opportunity 1. "We need new computers. The ones we have are 10 years old and half of them don't work anymore. And books. We never have enough books. And supplies, pencils, paper, calculators, we're always running out." "How much would all that cost? To really do it right? Replace all the computers, build up our library, stock supplies for the year?" She did quick mental math. "Maybe 25,000? But we usually raise that much over several months through fundraisers and grant applications." Ethan wrote the check for $50,000 and handed it to her. "The extra is for whatever else comes up. Unexpected expenses. Emergency repairs, field trips, whatever you think the kids need." The woman looked at the check, then at Ethan, then back at the check. "Sir, I can't. Are you serious?" "Completely serious. The only condition is that you don't put my name on anything. No plaques, no recognition, nothing. This is anonymous. But we need to know who to thank." "Thank the person who brought me here. Her name's Daisy Hart. She volunteers here sometimes, I think. Tell her this is from someone who appreciated a bicycle ride." He left before the woman could ask more questions, climbing back into the waiting car. As they pulled away from the curb, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not the satisfaction of closing a deal or the pride of building something successful. Something simpler and more fundamental. He felt useful. Not productive. Not efficient. Just useful. When he finally got home, the penthouse was dark and quiet. Lily was asleep, and the nanny had left a note saying she'd gone home for the night. Ethan walked through rooms full of expensive furniture and original art, past floor-to-ceiling windows with million-dollar views, and none of it felt as real as Daisy's plastic chairs and questionable tacos. He stopped in Lily's doorway, watching her sleep. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit that used to be Sarah's, her face peaceful in the dim glow of her nightlight. Tomorrow morning, Ethan decided they would have a real breakfast. Not him checking emails while she chattered. A real conversation where he actually listened. And this weekend they would go to a playground, not the sanitized one in their building. A real playground in a real neighborhood where real kids played. It wasn't much. It wouldn't solve anything. But Daisy's words kept echoing in his mind. Kids don't remember the nice equipment. They remember who pushed them on the swings. Maybe it was time to start building some memories that mattered more than his company's valuation. Ethan kissed Lily's forehead gently and walked to his own room. Before he went to sleep, he sent one final text to Jennifer. "Clear my schedule Saturday afternoon. I have plans." Her response came back immediately. "Is everything okay?" He smiled at his phone in the darkness. Getting there. Saturday morning arrived with Lily bouncing on Ethan's bed at 7 o'clock, her stuffed rabbit clutched in one hand and her voice already operating at full volume. Daddy, Daddy, wake up! You said we were doing something special today. Ethan cracked one eye open, his body protesting the early hour after a week of late nights finalizing merger details. I said Saturday afternoon, sweetheart. That means we can sleep a little longer. But I'm not tired anymore. Lily bounced harder, her dark curls, so much like Sarah's, flying around her face. And you promised. You never promise special things anymore, so this must be really, really special. The guilt hit like a punch to the sternum. When had his promises become so rare that a simple afternoon outing qualified as extraordinary? You're right, Ethan said, sitting up and pulling Lily into a hug. I did promise. How about we start with pancakes? Real pancakes? The ones you make, not the ones Maria makes. Real pancakes, with chocolate chips if you want them. Lily's squeal of delight was answer enough. They spent the morning in the kitchen, Ethan making a mess of the marble countertops while Lily helped by adding approximately half a bag of chocolate chips to the batter. The penthouse's state-of-the-art kitchen had probably never seen this much chaos, but watching Lily's flour-dusted face light up with each flip of a pancake made the mess worthwhile. These are the best pancakes in the whole world, Lily declared through a mouthful of chocolate and syrup. Even better than the restaurant ones. That's because we made them together. Ethan wiped a smear of batter from her cheek. Things are always better when you make them yourself. Is that why you like your company so much? Because you made it yourself? The question caught Ethan off guard. I suppose so. Why do you ask? Lily shrugged, swinging her legs under the table. You talk about your company a lot, more than you talk about other stuff. Do I? But even as Ethan asked, he knew she was right. How many dinners had he spent on conference calls? How many bedtime stories had he rushed through while mentally reviewing contracts? It's okay, Daddy. Maria says you work hard because you love me and want me to have nice things. Lily reached for another pancake. But I don't really care about nice things. I just like when you're home. Ethan felt something crack inside his chest. Here was his 6-year-old daughter, already wise enough to understand what he'd been too blind to see. The nice things, the private school, the penthouse, the designer clothes she barely noticed, none of it mattered as much as simply being present. Well, I'm home today, Ethan said, pushing his laptop bag further away from the table where it sat mocking him with its unread emails. All day, just you and me. And the special thing this afternoon? And the special thing this afternoon. Ethan smiled. It's a surprise. After breakfast, they played board games on the living room floor, something Ethan couldn't remember doing since before Sarah died. Lily beat him at Candyland 3 times in a row, celebrated each victory with elaborate dances, and then insisted on teaching him a clapping game she'd learned at school. His rhythm was terrible, but Lily's laughter made up for it. Around noon, Maria arrived for her usual Saturday shift, surprised to find Ethan still home. Mr. Calloway, I didn't expect you today. Did you need me to take Lily somewhere? Actually, I'm taking her out this afternoon. Ethan stood, brushing imaginary dirt from his jeans. Jeans, not his usual Saturday work slacks. You can have the day off. Maria's eyebrows rose. Sir, you never take Saturdays off? Well, I'm starting today. He handed her an envelope with a week's extra pay. Go enjoy yourself. We'll see you Monday. After Maria left, looking thoroughly confused, Lily grabbed Ethan's hand. Where are we going for the special thing? Remember how you said you wanted to learn to ride a bike without training wheels? Lily's eyes went wide. Really? Today? Today, but not here. I found a park where lots of kids learn to ride. I thought we could go there together. Is it the park downstairs with the fancy swings? No, it's a different park, in a different neighborhood, with different kids. Ethan hesitated, then added, kids like Miguel. Who's Miguel? Someone I met recently. He's 7, and he likes math even though he thinks it's boring. Lily giggled. Math is boring. Miguel's sister thinks useful things are usually boring. That's how you know they're worth learning. Miguel's sister sounds smart. She is, Ethan said quietly. Very smart. They took a car service to the neighborhood. Ethan having decided that showing up in one of his own luxury vehicles would send the wrong message. The driver dropped them at the edge of the playground Ethan had visited with Daisy, where families were already gathering for the weekend. The contrast to the building's sanitized play area was immediate. This playground had seen decades of use. The paint was chipped on the equipment, the rubber surfacing was patched in places, and the basketball court had cracks running through the concrete like rivers on a map. But it was full of life. Kids of all ages ran and played and shouted while parents and grandparents watched from benches, chatting with neighbors and sharing snacks. Wow, Lily breathed, taking in the chaos with wide eyes. There's so many kids. Is that okay? It's perfect. She squeezed his hand tighter. Can I go play on the swings while you get my bike ready? Ethan had bought a bike that morning from a local shop, deliberately choosing something modest rather than the top-of-the-line models he could afford. It was blue with white streamers on the handlebars, and Lily had loved it immediately. Go ahead, I'll set this up, and then we'll practice. He watched Lily run toward the swings, immediately falling into conversation with two other girls around her age. Within minutes, they were taking turns pushing each other, their laughter mixing with the general symphony of the playground. Fancy seeing you here, corporate man. Ethan turned to find Daisy walking toward him, wearing cut-off shorts and a tank top, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was pushing her bicycle, the same weathered frame that had saved his life earlier that week. Daisy? The surprise in Ethan's voice was genuine. I didn't know you'd be here. I live 2 blocks away. I'm here most Saturdays. She glanced at the new bicycle he was unboxing. Teaching someone to ride? My daughter, Lily. Ethan gestured toward the swings where Lily was now hanging upside down, her curls brushing the ground. She's been asking for months, but I kept putting it off. And you decided today was the day? Daisy's smile was knowing. Any particular reason? A wise person once told me that kids remember who pushed them on the swings, not the nice equipment. Sounds like a very wise person. Probably incredibly attractive, too. Modest, certainly. Ethan finished removing the training wheels that had come with the bike. What about you? Here for work or pleasure? Neither. Danny's playing basketball over there. She pointed to the court where a group of teenage boys was engaged in what looked like a highly competitive game. I like to watch him, make sure he's hanging out with the right people. The protective sister. Someone has to be. Daisy's expression softened as she watched her brother sink a three-pointer. He's doing better, staying out of trouble, but it's easy to fall back into old patterns in this neighborhood. Before Ethan could respond, Lily came running over, breathless and excited. Daddy, I made new friends. Emma and Sophia are teaching me a song about... She stopped abruptly, noticing Daisy. Hi. Who are you? This is Daisy, Ethan said. She's a friend of mine. Daisy, this is Lily. Daisy crouched down to Lily's level. Nice to meet you, Lily. Your dad's told me about you. He has? Lily looked at Ethan with surprise. You talked about me to your friend? Of course I did. You're my favorite topic. Lily beamed, then turned her attention to Daisy's bicycle. Your bike is really old. Does it still work? Lily, Ethan started, mortified, but Daisy just laughed. It is really old. I've had it for 8 years, but yeah, it still works great. I ride it everywhere. Everywhere? Even to work? Especially to work. Cars are expensive and buses are slow. Bikes are perfect. Daisy stood back up. Is that your bike over there? The blue one? Uh-huh. Daddy got it for me this morning. He's going to teach me to ride without training wheels. That's a big deal. You nervous? Lily considered this seriously. A little bit. What if I fall? Then you get back up and try again. That's how everything worth doing works. Daisy glanced at Ethan. Your dad knows that. He's really good at getting back up when things don't go the way he planned. Really? Lily looked at her father with new interest. You fall down, Daddy. Sometimes. Everyone does. But he always gets back up, Daisy added. That's what makes him good at what he does. Lily processed this, then grabbed Ethan's hand. Okay, I'm ready to learn now. Will you help me? For the next hour, Ethan ran alongside Lily's bicycle while she wobbled and shrieked and occasionally crashed into the grass. Each time she fell, she looked to him for reassurance, and each time he encouraged her to try again. Daisy watched from a nearby bench, occasionally calling out advice or cheering when Lily made it a few feet further than before. Other parents and kids drifted over, offering their own encouragement. An elderly man gave Lily a thumbs up. A mother with a toddler shared some water when Lily got thirsty, A group of kids playing nearby stopped to applaud when Lily finally made it 20 feet without Ethan's hand on the seat. This was what community felt like, Ethan realized. Not the professional networking events or charity galas he usually attended, but this. Strangers helping strangers, celebrating small victories together, existing in shared space with shared purpose. Daddy, Daddy, did you see? I did it! Lily crashed into his legs, nearly knocking him over. I rode all by myself! You did. I'm so proud of you. Ethan hugged her tight, not caring that she was sweaty and grass-stained. Want to try again? Yes! But can Daisy help this time? I want to show her. Before Ethan could respond, Lily had already run to the bench where Daisy sat. He watched his daughter tug on Daisy's hand, saw the genuine smile that crossed Daisy's face as she stood and followed Lily back to the bike. All right, kiddo, Daisy said, positioning herself where Ethan had been. Show me what you've got. Lily climbed onto the bike with new confidence, and Daisy jogged beside her, one hand hovering near the seat but not quite touching. Lily pedaled furiously, her face scrunched in concentration, and made it almost to the basketball court before losing her balance and tumbling into the grass. Ow, she said, but she was laughing. That was so far, though. That was amazing. Daisy helped her up, checking for scrapes. You're a natural. By next week, you'll be doing tricks. Really? Well, maybe not next week, but soon. They tried several more times, with Daisy's encouragement growing more enthusiastic with each attempt. Ethan found himself hanging back, watching the two of them together. Daisy was so natural with Lily, treating her like a real person rather than a delicate thing that might break. And Lily responded to it, pushing herself harder, laughing more freely. Eventually, Danny finished his basketball game and came over, sweating and out of breath. He was tall and lean, with Daisy's same sharp eyes and a wary expression that suggested he didn't trust easily. This your new side hustle? Danny asked his sister, nodding toward Lily. Teaching rich kids to bike? Danny, Daisy said, with warning in her voice. Don't be rude. This is Ethan and his daughter Lily. Danny's eyes widened slightly as recognition dawned. Wait, this is Corporate Man? The merger guy? You told him about me? Ethan asked Daisy. I might have mentioned the bicycle rescue. Daisy grabbed Danny's arm before he could say anything else embarrassing. Ethan, this is my brother Danny. Danny, use your manners. Nice to meet you, Danny said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. Daisy says you run a tech company. I do. You hiring? Danny! Daisy's mortification was complete, but Ethan found himself smiling. He appreciated Danny's directness, the lack of pretense. Actually, we have a summer internship program for college students. If you're interested, I can have my HR department send you information. Danny's suspicious expression shifted to surprise. Seriously? Seriously. Daisy mentioned you're studying computer science. We're always looking for smart people who know how to work hard. See? Daisy punched her brother's arm lightly. I told you good things happen when you're polite. I wasn't polite. I asked if he was hiring, which was incredibly rude, but effective. They bickered good-naturedly while Lily returned to her bike practice, this time managing almost 50 feet before crashing. Each attempt brought her closer to actually riding independently, and each crash seemed to bother her less. She's fearless, Daisy observed, watching Lily dust herself off after a particularly spectacular tumble. Wonder where she gets that. Not from me, Ethan said. I've spent most of my life avoiding risks. That's not true. You built a company from nothing. That's risky. That's calculated risk. Spreadsheets and projections. This, he gestured at Lily, at the playground, at the whole unpredictable mess of human interaction. This is different. This is the kind of risk I'm not good at. The kind where you can't control the outcome. Exactly. Daisy was quiet for a moment, watching Lily convince another little girl to race bikes with her. You know what I've learned working 4 jobs and raising my brother? Control is an illusion anyway. You can plan and prepare and do everything right, and life will still throw you curveballs. The only real choice you have is whether you're going to hide from the curveballs or learn to swing at them. Is that what you do? Swing at curveballs? Every single day. Sometimes I hit, sometimes I miss, but at least I'm playing the game. Miguel appeared then, the boy from the taco truck, riding his own bicycle in circles around the playground. When he spotted Daisy, his face lit up and he pedaled over. Daisy, did you see my wheelie? I've been practicing. I did see it. Very impressive. Daisy high-fived him. How's that long division coming? Miguel's enthusiasm dimmed. It's still boring, but I'm getting better at it. That's my boy. Daisy ruffled his hair affectionately. Miguel, this is my friend Ethan and his daughter Lily. Miguel gave Ethan a polite nod, then turned his attention to Lily. You want to race bikes? I'll give you a head start since you're just learning. Lily looked to Ethan for permission, and he nodded. She took off with Miguel, both of them laughing and wobbling their way across the playground. You're good with these kids, Ethan said to Daisy. They all know you, they all trust you. I've been tutoring at the center for 3 years. You get to know people. She paused, then added, The director called me yesterday, said some anonymous donor gave us $50,000. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Ethan kept his expression neutral. Why would I know anything about it? Because she said the donor specifically mentioned me, said to thank the person who volunteers here for bringing them by. Sounds like you made an impression on someone. Ethan, Daisy turned to face him fully. What did you do? I made a donation to an organization that's doing important work. That's all. That's not all. $50,000 is, she struggled for words. That's too much. It's not nearly enough for what they're trying to do, but it's a start. Ethan met her eyes. You told me to put my money towards something that matters. Education matters. Those kids matter. But I wasn't asking you to... Daisy ran her hands through her hair, frustrated. You don't owe me anything, Ethan. One bike ride doesn't equal $50,000 in donations. You're right, it doesn't. But this isn't about paying you back. This is about me finally looking around at the world outside my conference room and realizing how much work needs to be done. You opened my eyes to that, so thank you. Before Daisy could respond, a commotion erupted near the basketball court. Raised voices, then shouting. Danny was in the middle of it, arguing with another kid while their respective friends formed a tense circle around them. Damn it, Daisy muttered, already moving toward the conflict. I knew it was too good to last. Ethan followed her, adrenaline spiking. The argument had escalated quickly, something about a foul that wasn't called, accusations of cheating, the kind of stupid conflict that young men seem to excel at turning into something serious. Danny, walk away, Daisy called out as she approached. Whatever this is, it's not worth it. He's calling me a liar, Danny shouted back, his face flushed with anger. I'm not going to just let him. Yes, you are. Daisy pushed through the circle and grabbed her brother's arm. You're going to walk away right now because you're smarter than this. The other kid, bigger than Danny and radiating aggression, sneered. Yeah, listen to your sister. Run home like a little... Finish that sentence and we're going to have a problem, Daisy said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. She wasn't tall, wasn't physically intimidating, but something in her presence made everyone shut up. Here's what's going to happen. You're all going to back up, cool off, and remember that this is a park where kids play. Not a place for whatever masculine nonsense you're trying to prove. Who are you to tell me what to do? The other kid demanded. I'm someone who's watched too many people throw their lives away over stupid arguments about basketball fouls, and I'm not going to watch my brother become one of them. She pulled Danny back another step. We're leaving. You can all stand here and puff out your chests if that makes you feel better, but we're done. The circle of boys shifted, uncertain. For a moment, Ethan thought it might escalate anyway. Then one of the other kids, one of Danny's friends, spoke up. She's right. This is dumb. Let's just call it a tie and get some food. The tension broke like a popped balloon. The kids dispersed, still throwing challenging looks at each other but moving apart. Daisy kept her grip on Danny's arm and marched him away from the court, her expression furious. What the hell was that? She hissed, once they were out of earshot. You promised me you were done with this kind of thing. It wasn't my fault. He was cheating and then I don't care what he did. You walked away. That's what matters. Daisy's voice shook slightly, fear bleeding through the anger. Do you have any idea how fast things like that can go wrong? One punch, one wrong move, and everything you've been working for is gone. Danny looked at his feet, shame replacing his earlier bravado. I know, I'm sorry. He made me so mad. People are always going to make you mad, Danny. That's life. You can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond. She pulled him into a quick, fierce hug. I need you to be smarter than they are. Can you do that for me? Yeah, I can do that. Ethan watched the exchange, struck by the weight Daisy carried. She wasn't just Danny's sister, she was his parent, his conscience, his safety net. One wrong move and she'd lose him, and they both knew it. Lily appeared at Ethan's side, looking worried. Is everything okay, Daddy? Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just some boys being silly. He picked her up, needing to hold her close. You ready to go home? I think we've had enough excitement for one day. Can we come back next week? I want to practice more. We can come back next week, Ethan promised, looking at Daisy over Lily's head. She was still talking quietly to Danny, her hand on his shoulder, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and relief. When Danny finally wandered back to his friends, the ones who'd helped defuse the situation, Daisy returned to where Ethan and Lily waited. Sorry about that, she said, forcing a smile. Teenage boys are idiots. It's a medical fact. Is your brother going to be okay? Lily asked, with the serious concern of someone who'd never had a sibling to worry about. He'll be fine. He's just learning that being tough isn't the same as being strong. Daisy's eyes met Ethan's, and he saw the unspoken fear there. She was terrified of losing Danny the way she'd lost her mother, not to disease, but to the 100 small ways the world could swallow up young men who made mistakes in neighborhoods like this. Can I ask you something? Ethan said quietly, while Lily was distracted by Miguel showing her how to ring his bike bell. How much would it cost to send Danny to a better school, somewhere with fewer conflicts? Daisy's expression hardened immediately. No. I'm not trying to... I know what you're trying to do, and the answer is no. Danny's doing fine at community college. He doesn't need to be rescued. I'm not trying to rescue him. I'm trying to help. By throwing money at the problem? That's not help, Ethan. That's you trying to fix things because you can't stand seeing people struggle. Daisy's voice was sharp with emotion. Danny needs to figure this out on his own. He needs to learn to navigate his world, not escape into yours. What if your world shouldn't be this hard? What if he deserves better opportunities? Everyone deserves better opportunities. Everyone in this neighborhood is working twice as hard for half as much, and you can't save all of them with your checkbook. Daisy took a breath, clearly trying to calm down. I appreciate what you did for the tutoring center. I do, but my family isn't a charity case. I never said you were. You didn't have to. She grabbed her bicycle, ready to leave. Thank you for the afternoon. Lily's great, but maybe this was a mistake. Wait, Ethan started, but Daisy was already pedaling away, her brother jogging to catch up with her. Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Why is Daisy mad? Because I said something stupid. Ethan watched Daisy disappear around the corner, feeling like he'd somehow failed a test he didn't know he was taking. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you home. The car ride back to the penthouse was quiet. Lily fell asleep against his shoulder, exhausted from the day's excitement, while Ethan stared out the window and replayed the conversation in his mind. He'd been trying to help. That was all. But to Daisy, his help felt like pity, and maybe she was right to resent it. In his world, money solved problems. Need better technology? Buy it. Want to expand operations? Acquire the right company. Concerned about your daughter's education? Pay for the best schools. It was simple cause and effect. But Daisy's world didn't work that way. In her world, accepting help could feel like admitting defeat. Pride wasn't a luxury. It was sometimes the only thing people had left. Back at the penthouse, Ethan tucked Lily into bed and sat in his home office, staring at his laptop without really seeing it. The merger documents needed review. 3 acquisition proposals waited for his assessment. His calendar for the next month was already packed with meetings and calls and obligations. But all he could think about was Daisy's face when she'd pulled Danny away from that fight. The fear underneath her anger. The exhaustion of someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. His phone rang. Jennifer's name appeared on the screen. Tell me you're not working on a Saturday night, she said without preamble. I'm not working. I'm just thinking. About the merger terms? Because I reviewed the latest draft and I think we can push for better conditions on the technology transfer timeline. Not about the merger, about something else. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Are you okay, Ethan? You've been different this week, ever since the traffic incident. Have I? You turned down a celebration dinner. You took Saturday off. You keep staring out windows during meetings like you're somewhere else entirely." She paused. "Is this about that bike ride? Marcus told me someone gave you a lift on a bicycle. He thought it was hilarious." "It wasn't hilarious, it was—" Ethan struggled for the right word. "Illuminating." "Illuminating how?" "I met someone. Someone who showed me that I've been living in a very small world despite thinking it was vast." He could hear the confusion in Jennifer's silence. "The person who gave me that bike ride was a young woman named Daisy. She works 4 jobs, supports her brother, volunteers at a tutoring center, and somehow still finds time to help desperate strangers stuck in traffic." "Okay." "And today I tried to help her brother get better opportunities, and she accused me of treating her family like a charity case." "Were you?" Jennifer asked, cutting to the heart of it with her usual directness. "I don't know. Maybe. I was trying to fix a problem the way I always fix problems, with money and resources, but she made me realize that not every problem wants to be fixed that way." "So what are you going to do?" Ethan looked out his window at the glittering city below, thinking about a different Los Angeles than the one he usually saw. "I have no idea." After Jennifer hung up, Ethan sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the quiet sounds of his daughter sleeping down the hall. The merger that had consumed his thoughts for 3 years now felt almost trivial compared to the question of how to bridge the gap between his world and Daisy's. He couldn't buy his way into her life. He couldn't fix her problems without her permission. But he also couldn't ignore what he'd seen: the struggling tutoring center, the kids who needed more resources, the young men like Danny teetering on the edge of futures that could go either way with one wrong decision. Somewhere between Daisy's fierce independence and his own instinct to help, there had to be a middle ground. A way to use what he had without diminishing what she'd built. He just had to find it. Ethan didn't see Daisy for 2 weeks after the playground incident, and the absence felt heavier than he expected. He kept going back to that neighborhood with Lily on Saturdays, watching his daughter's bike skills improve while he scanned the crowd for a familiar face that never appeared. Miguel was there, always eager to show off his latest tricks. Other regulars recognized them now, waving hello or asking how Lily's riding was progressing. But Daisy and Danny were conspicuously absent. "Maybe she works on Saturdays now," Lily suggested one afternoon as they packed up to leave. She'd noticed Ethan's searching glances, his distraction. 6 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. "Maybe," Ethan agreed, though he suspected the truth was simpler. Daisy was avoiding him. The realization bothered him more than it should have. He'd known her for less than a month. One bicycle ride, one evening of tacos and conversation, one afternoon at a playground. It shouldn't matter this much that she'd disappeared from his life as quickly as she'd entered it. But it did matter, because those brief encounters had cracked something open inside him that he'd kept sealed shut since Sarah died. A reminder that the world was bigger than quarterly earnings and market share. That connection could happen in unexpected places with unexpected people. That maybe, just maybe, he'd been sleepwalking through his own life. On Monday morning, Ethan arrived at his office to find Jennifer waiting with an unusually serious expression. "We need to talk about the Yamamoto integration," she said, following him into his corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist decor. "There's been a complication." Ethan set down his briefcase and prepared himself for whatever crisis had emerged. In his experience, complications in international mergers ranged from minor inconveniences to deal-breaking disasters. What kind of complication? The cultural kind. Our teams aren't meshing the way we hoped. There's friction over decision-making processes, communication styles, even basic things like meeting structures. Jennifer pulled up a report on her tablet. "The Tokyo office feels like we're being too aggressive with implementation. Our people think they're being too cautious. It's creating tension that could undermine the whole partnership. Set up a call with Yamamoto-san. We'll address it directly." "I already did. He suggested something different." Jennifer hesitated, which was unusual for her. "He wants you to come to Tokyo, spend time there, build relationships face to face, show that you're invested in making this work beyond just the financial terms." "For how long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. 3 weeks away from Lily felt impossible, but even as he thought it, he recognized the irony. How many weeks had he already spent away from her while physically present? How many dinners had he missed for late meetings? How many bedtimes had he delegated to Maria while he worked in his study? When would I leave? Ideally, next Monday. That gives you a week to prepare Lily and arrange care. Lily comes with me, Ethan heard himself say. Maria, too. We'll make it a trip. Lily's never been to Japan and her school has that flexible curriculum. She can do her work remotely for a few weeks. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. You want to bring your 6-year-old daughter to high-level business negotiations? I want to bring my daughter to Tokyo and also attend high-level business negotiations. There's a difference. Ethan turned to look out his window at the city below. Besides, maybe the Yamamoto team would appreciate seeing that I'm a person with a family, not just a corporate entity. Might help with that cultural friction you mentioned. That's actually not a terrible idea. Jennifer made notes on her tablet. I'll arrange extended stay accommodations and coordinate with Lily's school. Anything else? Yes. I need you to find out which coffee shop Daisy Hart works at, the one in the morning shift. Jennifer looked up sharply. The bicycle girl? Her name is Daisy, and yes, why? Because I need to talk to her before I leave for Tokyo, and she's been avoiding the places I know to look. Ethan, Jennifer said carefully, I'm going to ask you something as your friend, not just your assistant. What exactly is happening here? I honestly don't know. Ethan turned back from the window. But whatever it is, it matters, and I need to at least try to fix it before I disappear to Japan for 3 weeks. Jennifer studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. I'll find the coffee shop. Give me an hour. She was back in 45 minutes with an address for Rosa's Coffee and more, the same place Ethan had visited that first evening. Of course, he'd known that already, but somehow it felt important to have Jennifer confirm it, to make this official in some way. The next morning, Ethan arrived at Rosa's at 6:30, early enough to catch the pre-work rush, but late enough that he hoped Daisy would already be in. Through the window, he could see her behind the counter, her hair pulled back, moving through the familiar choreography of espresso machines and steaming milk. She looked tired, more tired than he remembered. Ethan pushed open the door, the bell chiming his arrival. Daisy glanced up automatically, her customer service smile already in place. When she saw who it was, the smile froze, then faded into something more complicated. Corporate man, she said, her tone carefully neutral. Long time no see. Can we talk? I'm working. I can wait. Ethan gestured to the growing line behind him. I'll order. Sit down and wait until you have a break. Daisy's jaw tightened, but she nodded. What can I get you? Whatever you think I should have. She made him a cortado without asking for payment, sliding it across the counter with a look that suggested this was not forgiveness, merely efficiency. Ethan took the cup and found a table in the corner where he could watch her work without being in the way. The morning rush was brutal. Daisy handled it with practiced ease, remembering orders, making small talk, moving between tasks with zero wasted motion. She worked alone. No other barista, just her and an older woman who occasionally emerged from the back to restock supplies. During a brief lull, the older woman said something to Daisy in Spanish, gesturing toward Ethan. Daisy's response was too quiet to hear, but her expression said enough. She didn't want him here. At 7:45, the rush finally slowed. Daisy poured herself a cup of coffee and came to Ethan's table, sitting down with obvious reluctance. You have 5 minutes before the second wave starts, she said. Talk. I'm sorry. Ethan met her eyes directly. For what I said at the playground. For trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. For making you feel like I was treating you and Danny like charity cases. Daisy was quiet, her coffee cup cradled between her palms. Do you understand why I got angry? I think so. You've worked hard to build a life for yourself and your brother. When I offered to pay for better schools or whatever, it felt like I was saying your hard work wasn't good enough. Like I was minimizing everything you'd accomplished. Close, but not quite. Daisy took a sip of her coffee. The problem isn't that you wanted to help. It's that you assumed you knew what help should look like. You saw Danny almost get in a fight and immediately decided the solution was to remove him from this neighborhood, from this world. Like the problem was where we live instead of the specific situation that happened. Wasn't it? If Danny was somewhere with fewer conflicts, he'd still be Danny. He'd still have a temper. He'd still have to learn to control it. Daisy leaned forward. You can't buy someone into being a different person, Ethan. and you can't protect them from every hard thing by putting them in a softer environment. Sometimes the hard things are what teach them who they need to become. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also real. And real growth doesn't happen in carefully controlled environments where nothing ever goes wrong. She paused, then added more softly, I'm not saying your way is wrong. I'm sure Lily has a great life with all the advantages you give her, but it's not the only way to raise a kid. Danny needs to learn to navigate his world, not escape it. What if his world is unnecessarily cruel? Then he learns to be stronger than the cruelty. That's a skill he can take anywhere. Daisy finished her coffee. Look, I appreciate the donation to the tutoring center. Really. Those new computers are already making a huge difference, but my family isn't a project for you to manage. We're doing okay. You work 4 jobs, Daisy. That's not okay. According to whose standards? Yours? She smiled, but there was an edge to it. I'm 26 years old. I support myself and help my brother. I have a place to live, food to eat, and work that matters. Yeah, I'm tired sometimes. Yeah, money is tight. But I'm not drowning, I'm swimming. There's a difference. Ethan wanted to argue, to point out all the ways her life could be easier if she just let him help. But he'd learned enough to recognize when pushing would only drive her further away. I'm going to Tokyo next week, he said instead, for the merger integration. I'll be gone for 2 or 3 weeks. Something flickered across Daisy's face. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment? Okay, that's good. For your business, I mean. Lily's coming with me. She's excited about it. Keeps talking about learning to say hello in Japanese and trying real sushi. Ethan smiled at the thought. Last Saturday at the playground, she finally rode 50 feet without any help. She wanted you to see it. You and Danny. We've been busy. Busy or avoiding me? Daisy had the grace to look slightly guilty. Maybe both. I needed space to cool off, and Danny's been grounded for the fight thing, so no basketball for 2 weeks. He's learning that actions have consequences. That seems fair? Ethan traced a pattern on the table with his finger. I don't want to leave for Tokyo with things weird between us. I don't expect us to be best friends or anything, but I'd like to think we're at least still friendly. We're friendly, Daisy said after a pause. I'm sorry I disappeared. That was immature. I needed to figure out how I felt about everything. And have you figured it out? Mostly. I think you're a good person who genuinely wants to help. I also think you're used to solving problems with money because that's the tool you have. We're just going to keep bumping into each other if I need help that money can't buy, and you keep offering money because it's what you know how to give. So what do I do? The bell above the door chimed. 3 customers walked in, and Daisy glanced at them, then back at Ethan. You trust that I know what I need better than you do, and when I ask for help, you give it. But you don't go looking for problems to fix in my life without asking first. She stood, smoothing her apron. I need to get back to work. Wait, one more thing. Ethan stood too. Would you and Danny want to have dinner before I leave? Nothing fancy. Maybe at that taco truck again, just to say goodbye properly. Daisy considered this, weighing something in her mind. Finally, she nodded. Thursday night, 6 o'clock. And Ethan? Bring Lily. I want to hear about that 50-foot ride. Deal. Thursday arrived with Lily practically vibrating with excitement. She'd been talking about seeing Daisy again all week, and Ethan had learned more than he wanted to know about his daughter's opinions on whether Daisy and Daddy were boyfriend and girlfriend. We're just friends, sweetheart, Ethan had explained multiple times. That's what everyone says before they become boyfriend and girlfriend, Lily insisted with the confidence of someone who'd watched exactly 0 romantic relationships develop. Emma's mom told her dad they were just friends, and now they're married. Emma's parents were divorced and got back together. That's different. Why? Because they already knew they loved each other. They just had to remember it. Lily had absorbed this with great seriousness. Do you love Daisy? The question had caught Ethan completely off guard. Did he? Love was a complicated word, carrying weight he wasn't ready to examine. But there was something there, an attraction that went beyond physical, a pull toward someone who challenged him and frustrated him and made him want to be better than he was. I care about her, Ethan had said carefully. She's become important to me. That sounds like love, Lily announced, and refused to discuss it further. Now, Walking toward El Gordo's taco truck with Lily skipping beside him, Ethan found himself nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first date with Sarah, which was ridiculous. This wasn't a date. This was dinner with a friend and her brother, with his daughter present as a very effective chaperone. Daisy was already there when they arrived, sitting at the same plastic chairs with Danny beside her. She changed out of her work clothes into a sundress that looked both casual and somehow prettier than anything Ethan had seen her wear before. Her hair was down, curling around her shoulders. "Daisy!" Lily ran ahead and threw herself at Daisy with the unselfconscious affection of a child who'd decided someone was worth loving. "I rode 50 feet. Daddy said you wanted to see, but you weren't there, so I'm telling you about it instead." 50 feet. That's amazing. Daisy hugged Lily back, her smile genuine and warm. "Pretty soon you'll be riding circles around your dad." "I already am. He can't keep up when I go fast." "That's because you're young and I'm old," Ethan said, joining them. He nodded to Danny. "Hey, how's the grounding going?" "Terrible," Danny said, but he was grinning. 2 weeks without basketball feels like 2 years. But Daisy's making me volunteer at the tutoring center instead, which is actually kind of cool. Turns out I'm good at explaining algebra. "Because you're patient with the kids who don't get it right away," Daisy added. "You remember what it's like to struggle, so you don't make them feel stupid." "Yeah, well, someone's got to make up for Mrs. Chen's math teaching. She's great with reading, terrible with numbers." They ordered food. Ethan getting the same al pastor tacos that had ruined him for all other tacos, Lily trying carne asada after Daisy promised it wasn't too spicy, Danny ordering enough food for 3 people. Gordo greeted them like old friends, giving Lily an extra taco for being such a good customer's daughter. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Ethan expected. Danny talked about his classes and his plans to transfer to a 4-year university next year. Lily regaled them with stories about her upcoming trip to Tokyo, complete with dramatic hand gestures and sound effects. Daisy listened to everything with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's jokes. "You're going to love Tokyo," Daisy said. "I've never been, but I've heard it's incredible. All the food and the culture and the organized chaos." "You should come with us," Lily said immediately. "Then Daddy wouldn't be lonely when he has to do boring work stuff." "Lily," Ethan started, mortified, but Daisy just laughed. "I don't think your dad's going to be lonely, sweetheart. He's got you there to keep him company. And besides, I can't take 3 weeks off work. Who would make everyone's coffee?" "Other people make coffee," Lily said with a child's simple logic. "You could teach them, and then go on vacation." "It doesn't really work like that when you're the only barista." Daisy caught Ethan's eye over Lily's head, her expression amused, but I appreciate the thought. After they finished eating, Danny challenged Lily to a bike race around the parking lot while the adults supervised. Ethan found himself standing next to Daisy, watching their respective charges circle the cracked asphalt with competitive determination. "Thank you for this," Ethan said quietly, "for giving me another chance." "You didn't really do anything that bad," Daisy admitted. "I overreacted. It's just, I've spent so long proving that I can handle everything on my own that it's hard to accept help, even well-intentioned help. Why is it so important to handle it alone? Because if I can't, then what was the point? What was the point of my mom working herself to death if I can't even keep the life she built for us from falling apart?" Daisy's voice cracked slightly. "She sacrificed everything so Danny and I could have better opportunities. The least I can do is make sure we use them." Ethan wanted to point out that accepting help didn't diminish her mother's sacrifice, that she didn't have to carry everything alone to honor what her mother had done. But he was learning to recognize when Daisy needed space to come to conclusions on her own. "For what it's worth," he said instead, "I think you're doing an incredible job. Danny's lucky to have you." Sometimes I'm not sure he'd agree. I'm pretty hard on him. "Because you love him. That's what good parents do." "I'm not his parent. I'm his sister." "You're both." Ethan watched Lily pull ahead in the race, her laughter carrying across the parking lot. Being a parent isn't just about biology. It's about showing up every day and making hard decisions and putting someone else's future ahead of your own comfort. By that definition, you're absolutely Danny's parent. Daisy was quiet for a long moment. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a while. It's just the truth." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the kids race. When Danny inevitably let Lily win, Something she didn't notice but the adults did. Daisy called them back over. All right, it's getting late and Danny has homework. We should head out. Wait, Lily said, digging in her small backpack. I made you something, Daisy, for being nice to me and teaching me about the playground. But she pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to Daisy. When Daisy unfolded it, Ethan saw a crayon drawing of two stick figures on bicycles. One tall with long hair, one small with curly hair. Above them, Lily had written in her careful 6-year-old handwriting, Daisy and me, friends forever. Oh, Lily, Daisy's voice went soft. This is beautiful, thank you. You're welcome. You can keep it in your house and remember me when I'm in Japan. I'll definitely do that. Daisy folded the picture carefully and tucked it into her bag. Then she crouched down to Lily's level. You have a great time in Tokyo, okay? Try all the weird food and make lots of memories with your dad. I will, and I'll bring you back a present. You don't have to do that. I want to. Lily threw her arms around Daisy's neck in another fierce hug. You're one of my favorite people. Ethan saw Daisy's eyes close briefly, her expression a mixture of pleasure and pain. When she opened them again, they were suspiciously bright. You're one of my favorites too, kiddo. After Lily released her, Daisy stood and turned to Ethan. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the space between them charged with things unsaid. Have a safe trip, Daisy said finally. Both of you. Thank you. And Daisy? Ethan took a breath, committing to something he'd been thinking about all week. When I get back, I'd like to talk to you about something. A real conversation, not just tacos and small talk. About what? About whether there's a way for someone from my world and someone from yours to actually exist in the same space without one of us compromising everything that matters to them. Daisy's breath caught slightly. That's a big conversation. I know. That's why I want 3 weeks to think about how to have it properly. Okay? The word was barely a whisper. When you get back, Danny and Lily had already started walking toward where their respective rides waited. Daisy's bicycle for her and Danny, Ethan's car service for him and Lily. But Ethan lingered a moment longer. I'm going to miss this, he said. The tacos, the playground, you. I'll still be here when you get back, Daisy promised. Same coffee shop, same neighborhood, same questionable taco truck. Good. Ethan smiled. Don't let anyone else rescue you from traffic while I'm gone. I make no promises. I'm a serial good Samaritan. They walked to their respective vehicles together, splitting off at the last moment with waves and goodbyes. As Ethan's car pulled away from the curb, he looked back to see Daisy and Danny riding off on their bicycles, side by side, disappearing into the evening traffic. Lily was already chattering about what to pack for Tokyo, but Ethan found himself only half listening. His mind was 3 weeks in the future, imagining the conversation he'd promised to have with Daisy, trying to figure out what he wanted to say and whether he had the courage to actually say it. The truth was, he was falling for her. Maybe had been since that first bicycle ride when she'd refused his money and told him to help someone else instead. Maybe even earlier, in that first moment when she'd stopped beside his car and offered the most improbable solution to an impossible problem. She challenged everything he thought he knew about success and happiness and what made a life worthwhile. She made him want to be better. Not richer or more successful, but more human, more present, more real. But she'd also made it clear that she didn't want to be saved or fixed or transformed into someone who fit more easily into his world, which meant if there was going to be anything between them, he'd have to meet her where she was. He'd have to learn to exist in her neighborhood, her coffee shops, her playground, without trying to upgrade them to match his standards. Could he do that? Could he let go of control enough to be part of her world instead of expecting her to become part of his? That was the real question, and he had 3 weeks in Tokyo to figure out the answer. The flight to Japan was long but surprisingly pleasant. Lily's excitement was infectious, and Ethan found himself enjoying the trip more than he'd enjoyed traveling for business in years. Maria sat a few rows back, giving them space to be a family unit without hovering, but close enough to help when Lily's energy became overwhelming. Tokyo itself was everything Daisy had described: organized chaos, ancient temples next to neon-lit skyscrapers, incredible food around every corner. The Yamamoto team welcomed them warmly, and Ethan quickly discovered that having Lily with him was indeed the right call. The Japanese executives softened around her, sharing stories of their own children and grandchildren, treating the business negotiations with slightly less formality when a 6-year-old was coloring at the conference room table. The cultural friction Jennifer had worried about began to ease as Ethan made a genuine effort to understand the Yamamoto team's perspective rather than simply pushing for his own preferred solutions. He learned to slow down, to value consensus over speed, to see the merger as a partnership rather than an acquisition with different branding. In the evenings, he and Lily explored the city. They visited temples and gardens, rode the efficient subway system, tried foods that Lily initially found weird but usually ended up loving. She made friends with kids at the hotel despite the language barrier, proving that play was a universal language that needed no translation. And through it all, Ethan thought about Daisy. He found himself composing texts he never sent, drafting versions of the conversation he wanted to have when he returned. What would he say? How could he express what he was feeling without making it sound like another problem he wanted to solve with resources and planning? 2 weeks into the trip, during a rare moment alone while Lily and Maria visited a toy store, Ethan called Jennifer. "How's Tokyo?" she asked. "Productive. The Yamamoto team is happy. I think we're actually going to make this partnership work." "That's great. So why do you sound stressed?" "Because I've spent 2 weeks trying to figure out how to tell someone I care about them without screwing it up, and I'm no closer to an answer than when I left." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "We're talking about Daisy. We're talking about Daisy. Ethan, can I give you some advice? As someone who's watched you navigate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, please, boss, stop trying to plan this like a business negotiation. Stop running scenarios and preparing speeches and anticipating objections. Just talk to her. Tell her how you feel. See what she says. It's messy and unpredictable and you can't control the outcome, but that's what makes it real." "That's terrifying." "Love usually is. That's how you know it matters." Jennifer paused. "You do love her, right? This isn't just fascination with someone different from your usual world?" Ethan thought about Daisy's smile when she talked about her students, the fierce protectiveness in her voice when she defended Danny, the quiet dignity with which she navigated a life that was harder than it should be, the way she made him want to be better without ever asking him to be different. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I love her." "Then tell her that. Everything else will figure itself out." After he hung up, Ethan sat in a small park near the hotel, watching Tokyo life flow around him. Business people rushing to meetings, families enjoying the afternoon, an elderly couple feeding birds with the patience of people who had all the time in the world. Jennifer was right. He'd been overthinking this, trying to plan and control an outcome that was inherently unplannable and uncontrollable. The only thing he could do was be honest about what he felt and respect whatever Daisy said in response. If she felt the same way, they'd figure out how to make it work. If she didn't, he'd accept it and be grateful for the ways she'd already changed his life. The simplicity of it was almost shocking. For someone who'd built a career on complex strategies and calculated risks, the solution to this particular problem was startlingly straightforward. Tell the truth and trust the outcome. He could do that. He would do that. On his last night in Tokyo, Ethan tucked Lily into bed in their hotel suite and pulled out a piece of hotel stationery. He'd write it down now, not to memorize, but to clarify his own thoughts, to make real what he'd been circling around for weeks. "Dear Daisy," he wrote, then stopped. A letter felt too formal, too removed. This needed to be said in person, face to face, in the kind of direct honesty she'd shown him from the beginning. He crumpled the paper and threw it away. Then he pulled out his phone and typed a single text message. "Coming home Saturday. Can we talk?" Her response came back within minutes, which meant she was either working late or couldn't sleep. "Yes. Same taco truck? Perfect. 7 o'clock? I'll be there." Ethan set down his phone, feeling something settle in his chest. No more planning, no more scenarios. Just Saturday night, street tacos, and whatever truth needed to be spoken between them. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. The flight home felt longer than the flight to Tokyo, stretched thin by anticipation and nerves that Ethan couldn't quite settle. Lily slept for most of it, her head resting against his shoulder, clutching a stuffed Totoro they'd bought in Harajuku. Maria read quietly across the aisle, giving him space with his thoughts. Those thoughts kept circling back to 7 o'clock Saturday night. to Daisy, to everything he wanted to say and all the ways it could go wrong. They landed Friday evening, giving Ethan exactly 1 day to recover from jet lag and prepare for a conversation that felt more important than any merger negotiation he'd ever conducted. He spent Saturday morning with Lily, listening to her tell Maria everything about Tokyo in exhaustive detail while he pushed food around his plate and checked his watch too many times. "Daddy, you're being weird," Lily announced over lunch. "Are you nervous about seeing Daisy?" "A little bit, yeah."
Why? She's nice. She likes you. I know she's nice. I'm just not sure she likes me the same way I like her. Lily considered this with the gravity of someone weighing matters of international importance. Did you bring her the present I picked out? It's in my bag. The ceramic cat from that little shop in Kyoto. Then you'll be fine. Everyone likes presents. Lily returned to her sandwich with the matter apparently settled in her mind. If only it were that simple, Ethan thought.
But he appreciated his daughter's confidence, even if it was based on 6-year-old logic and an incomplete understanding of adult relationships. At 6:30, Ethan left the penthouse and headed toward the taco truck. He'd offered to pick Daisy up, but she'd insisted on meeting him there. Neutral territory, he supposed. A place where they'd already shared meals and conversations, where the ground felt familiar, even if what they needed to discuss was anything but. He arrived early, at 6:45, and ordered from Gordo without really knowing what he wanted. The older man studied him with knowing eyes. "You look nervous, my friend. Big conversation tonight? That obvious?" "I've been serving tacos for 27 years. I know the difference between hunger and nervousness." Gordo gestured to the plastic chairs. "Sit, eat. Whatever you need to say, you'll say it better with food in your stomach." Ethan took his tacos and sat, forcing himself to take a few bites, even though his appetite had disappeared somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The food was as good as always, smoky and perfectly seasoned, but he barely tasted it. At 7 o'clock exactly, Daisy appeared on her bicycle. She was wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders, and Ethan felt his breath catch, the same way it had that first morning when she'd stopped beside his car in traffic. She looked tired but beautiful, real in a way that made everything else feel slightly artificial by comparison. "Hey, corporate man," she said, parking her bike and walking over. "Welcome back to Los Angeles." "Thanks. It's good to be home." Ethan stood, suddenly awkward with the weight of everything unsaid between them. "How have you been?" "Busy, working, the usual." Daisy sat in the plastic chair across from him. "How was Tokyo?" "Amazing. Eye-opening. Lily loved it. The merger integration is going better than expected." He was rambling, filling space with words because he didn't know how to start the real conversation. "She made you something. Lily, I mean. Well, technically I bought it, but she picked it out." He pulled the wrapped package from his bag and handed it to Daisy. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing the small ceramic cat with its raised paw and serene expression. "It's a manekineko," Ethan explained. "A lucky cat. Lily said you needed one because you worked so hard and deserve good luck." Daisy held the cat gently, running her thumb over its smooth surface. "It's beautiful. Tell Lily thank you." "You can tell her yourself. She's already planning your next bike riding lesson." "Is she?" Daisy set the cat down carefully on the table between them. "Ethan, what did you want to talk about?" There it was. The question that ended the small talk and demanded real answers. Ethan took a breath, remembering Jennifer's advice. "Stop planning. Just tell the truth." "I've been thinking about you the entire time I was in Tokyo," he started. Seeing the city through Lily's eyes, watching her make friends despite language barriers, learning to slow down and value different perspectives. All of it kept reminding me of what you've been trying to teach me since that first bicycle ride. Which is? That control is an illusion. That the best things in life can't be planned or bought. That sometimes you have to let go and trust people to meet you where you are, instead of trying to manage them into where you want them to be. Ethan leaned forward, holding her gaze. "You've changed how I see the world, Daisy. You've changed how I see myself." Daisy's expression was guarded, careful. "That's a lot to put on someone you've known for less than 2 months." "I know. And I'm not trying to put pressure on you or make this into something you don't want it to be, but I need you to know that this, whatever this is between us, it matters to me. You matter to me." "Ethan, let me finish." Please. He took another breath. I'm not asking you to change your life or move into my world or be someone you're not. I'm asking if there's a possibility that we could figure out how to exist in the same space. How to build something that respects both of our worlds, without requiring either of us to abandon what matters most. Daisy was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. What does that look like to you, practically speaking? I don't know. That's the honest answer. I've never done this before, tried to bridge two completely different lives into something that works for both people. But I'm willing to try if you are. And if it doesn't work, if we try and discover that we're just too different from worlds that don't actually connect no matter how much we want them to, then at least we tried. At least we were honest about what we felt instead of spending the rest of our lives wondering what if. Ethan paused, then took the final leap. Daisy, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already fell. And I needed you to know that before I let fear or practicality or the very real differences between our lives talk me out of saying it. The words hung in the air between them, naked and vulnerable in a way that made Ethan feel stripped bare. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, given presentations to rooms full of investors, built a company from nothing. But none of that had prepared him for this moment, for sitting across from someone who might not feel the same way and waiting for their response. Daisy's eyes had gone bright with unshed tears. You don't even really know me. I know enough. I know you're kind without being soft, strong without being cruel. That you work 4 jobs to support your brother and still find time to volunteer with kids who need you. That you offered a ride to a desperate stranger and refused payment because helping shouldn't be a transaction. He smiled slightly. I know you make the best cortados in Los Angeles, and you're teaching my daughter that being brave means getting back up when you fall. That's not love, Ethan. That's admiration, maybe fascination with someone different from your usual world. Then let me tell you what else I know. Ethan's voice went soft. I know that when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I have since Sarah died. That you make me want to be present instead of productive. That I think about you when I should be thinking about work. And I don't even mind because thinking about you feels more important. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the intention. I know that 3 weeks away from you felt longer than it should have. That I'm terrified right now because you might not feel the same way. But telling you the truth is still better than keeping it to myself. A tear escaped down Daisy's cheek, and she brushed it away impatiently. This is a terrible idea. Probably. We live in completely different worlds. You have a penthouse, and a company, and a daughter who goes to private school. I have 4 jobs and a brother who almost gets in fights at playground basketball courts. How is that supposed to work? I don't know, but I want to try to figure it out. Ethan finally closed the distance and took her hand. Tell me you don't feel anything, and I'll let this go. I'll accept that we're just friends, and I'll be grateful for what you've already given me. But if there's even a chance you feel something too, of course I feel something, Daisy's voice cracked. I've been fighting it for weeks because it doesn't make sense. You're this successful CEO with your perfect life, and I'm just me. I work at a coffee shop and ride a bike because I can't afford a car and live in a tiny apartment with my 19-year-old brother. What could you possibly want with someone like me? Everything. The word came out fierce, certain. I want everything with you. The coffee shop conversations and the bicycle rides and the questionable tacos. The playground Saturdays and the tutoring center visits and whatever else your life looks like. I want to be part of it, not change it. But what about your life, your work, your obligations? Lily already loves you. She talks about you constantly. And my work... Ethan stopped, realizing something. My work will always be there. It's important, but it's not the only important thing. You've taught me that. Daisy was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. I'm scared. Me too. What if I'm not enough? What if you get tired of slumming it in my neighborhood and realize you need someone who fits better into your world? What if you get tired of me trying to fix things with money and realize you need someone who understands struggle the way you do? Ethan countered. We can what if ourselves to death, or we can trust that what we feel is real and worth fighting for. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. I love you. Do you love me? The question hung between them, demanding an answer that would change everything or nothing depending on what she said. Daisy stared at their joined hands, her tears falling onto the table, her breath shaky. "Yes," she whispered finally. "I love you, and it terrifies me." Ethan felt something unlock in his chest, relief and joy and fear all mixing together. "Can we be terrified together?" Daisy laughed through her tears. "That's the worst romantic line I've ever heard."
"I'm new at this. Give me time to improve." "How much time?"
"However much you'll give me." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking for perfect. I'm just asking for a chance." Daisy looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something. Reassurance, maybe, or proof that this was real, and not just some fantasy that would dissolve under the weight of their differences. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "Okay, we can try." Yeah, but Ethan, I need you to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you won't try to save me or fix my life or turn me into someone who fits more comfortably into your world. I need to be who I am, even if that means sometimes choosing the hard way instead of the easy way you could provide." "I promise. As long as you promise to tell me when I'm being an idiot about it. Because I'm going to mess up. I'm going to offer help when you don't want it, or try to solve problems that aren't mine to solve. Just call me on it when I do." "Deal." Daisy wiped her eyes with her free hand. "This is insane. You know that, right? This whole thing is completely insane." The best things usually are. They sat there in the parking lot of a questionable taco truck, holding hands across a plastic table, while the city moved around them indifferent to the small miracle happening in their corner of it. Gordo appeared at some point with fresh tacos and set them down without comment, his knowing smile saying everything that needed to be said. "So what happens now?" Daisy asked eventually, picking up a taco without letting go of Ethan's hand. "Now we figure it out as we go. You keep working your jobs, I keep running my company, and we find time for each other in between. We introduce each other to our world slowly, without pressure. We let Lily and Danny be part of this because they already are, whether we planned it or not. Danny's going to freak out. Lily's going to say she knew it all along." Ethan smiled. "They'll probably become friends and conspire against us. I can live with that." Daisy took a bite of her taco, and Ethan saw some of the tension leave her shoulders. "What about the practical stuff? Where do we even start? How about breakfast tomorrow? You, me, Lily, and Danny. Somewhere in your neighborhood, your choice. We let the kids see that this is real, and we're doing this together. And then what? Then we take it one day at a time. I stop trying to plan everything 6 months in advance, and you stop assuming that accepting my presence in your life means you're compromising your independence." He paused. "We learn to be a team instead of two separate people trying to maintain separate lives." Daisy was quiet, absorbing this. Then she said, "I have to work tomorrow morning. Coffee shop shift starts at 6. "What time do you finish, Shake?" 10. "Then we'll do a late breakfast. 11 o'clock, wherever you want. There's a diner 2 blocks from Rosa's. They do terrible pancakes and even worse coffee, but the owner is sweet and lets people sit for hours without bothering them." "Sounds perfect." They finished their tacos while making plans, discussing logistics with the same seriousness that other couples might bring to wedding planning. Who would pick up whom, what they'd tell the kids, how to navigate the inevitable weirdness of introducing their very different worlds to each other. But underneath the practical conversation, something else was happening. They were building trust. They were choosing each other despite all the very reasonable reasons why this shouldn't work. They were taking the terrifying leap from admiration and attraction into actual commitment. When the tacos were gone and the sky had darkened completely, Daisy stood to leave. Ethan stood with her, not ready to say goodbye even though he knew they'd see each other tomorrow. "Thank you," Daisy said softly, "for being brave enough to say it first. I don't know if I would have been." "You would have. Eventually. You're the bravest person I know." "I ride a bicycle because I can't afford a car." "That's not brave, that's just poor." "You offered a ride to a desperate stranger and refused payment because you believe helping shouldn't be a transaction. You work 4 jobs to support your brother and still volunteer with kids who need you. You stand up to guys twice your size when they threaten people you love." Ethan touched her face gently. "That's not poverty, that's courage." Daisy leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "You're going to make me cry again. I'll try to limit the emotional speeches to once per evening." "Appreciated." She opened her eyes and smiled, that same bright smile that had caught his attention from the beginning. I should go. Early shift tomorrow. I could drive you home. I have my bike. I could put it in the trunk. Ethan, Daisy's tone was patient. I'm riding my bike home because that's what I do. Not because I can't afford a ride, not because I'm being stubborn, but because this is my life. And if we're going to do this, you need to get comfortable with my life looking different from yours. You're right. I'm sorry. Ethan stepped back, giving her space. Text me when you get home, so you can verify I arrived safely, so I can stop worrying like an idiot and go to sleep. Daisy laughed. Fine, I'll text you. She walked to her bicycle, then paused and turned back. Hey, Ethan. Yeah? I love you too, just in case that got lost in all the crying and negotiating. It didn't get lost. Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest, but I don't mind hearing it again. I love you, Daisy repeated, each word deliberate. Even though you're impossible, and you overthink everything, and you're going to drive me crazy trying to fix problems that don't need fixing. I love you too. Even though you're stubborn, and you won't let me help even when I could make things easier, and you're going to drive me crazy with your insistence on doing everything the hard way. Well, we're going to be a disaster, aren't we? Probably. But we'll be a disaster together. Daisy shook her head, still smiling, and climbed onto her bicycle. See you tomorrow, corporate man. See you tomorrow. Ethan watched her ride away, her taillight blinking red in the darkness until she disappeared around a corner. Then he stood in the parking lot for a few more minutes, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. He told Daisy he loved her. She'd said it back. They were going to try to make this work despite every practical reason why it shouldn't. The merger that had consumed his thoughts for 3 years suddenly felt like a footnote to the real story of this year. The morning he'd gotten stuck in traffic, and a young woman on a bicycle had appeared like an answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. His phone buzzed. A text from Daisy. Home safe, stop worrying. He texted back. Too late. Already worrying about breakfast tomorrow. It's pancakes, not a board meeting. Relax. I'll try. Good night, Daisy. Good night, Ethan. And hey, thank you for taking the chance. Thank you for being worth it. When Ethan got home, Lily was still awake despite Maria's best efforts to enforce bedtime. She was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, the stuffed Totoro clutched in her arms, waiting. Well? She demanded as soon as Ethan walked through the door. Did you tell her? I told her. And? And she said she loves me too. Lily's squeal of delight probably woke half the building. She launched herself at Ethan, wrapping her arms around his waist. I knew it. I knew you were boyfriend and girlfriend. We're going to take it slow, sweetheart. We're still figuring out how this is going to work. It's going to work great. Daisy's the best, and you're the best, so together you'll be double best. Lily's logic was unassailable in its simplicity. Can she come live with us? And Danny too? We have lots of rooms. It doesn't work like that. Daisy has her own apartment, her own life. We're not changing everything immediately. But eventually? Ethan crouched down to Lily's level. Maybe eventually, but that's a long way off, and there's a lot we need to figure out first. For now, we're just going to spend time together and see how it goes. Like dates? Like dates. Starting with breakfast tomorrow. You, me, Daisy, and Danny. Lily's eyes went wide. A family breakfast? Sort of. More like 2 families getting to know each other better. That's the same thing, Lily insisted. If you love each other and we all eat together, that makes us a family. Out of the mouths of children, Ethan thought. Sometimes the truth was exactly that simple. Breakfast the next morning was delightfully chaotic. The diner Daisy had chosen was exactly as advertised. Worn booths, cracked vinyl seats, pancakes that were slightly burned around the edges, and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed sometime last week. But the owner, a woman named Gladys who called everyone Han and kept their coffee cups perpetually full, made everyone feel welcome. Danny arrived looking suspicious and protective, clearly prepared to judge Ethan harshly on behalf of his sister. Lily arrived looking ecstatic, already chattering to Danny about Tokyo and bicycles and everything else that crossed her 6-year-old mind. The two of them sized each other up for about 30 seconds before Lily asked if Danny wanted to see pictures of her trip, and the ice was effectively broken. "Your sister's pretty cool," Danny said to Daisy while Lily showed him photos on Ethan's phone. "Weird, but cool." "Thanks, I think." Daisy sipped her terrible coffee and made a face. "Gladys, this coffee is somehow worse than usual." "Then stop drinking it, smart mouth," Gladys called from behind the counter, but she was smiling. The breakfast itself was less awkward than Ethan had feared. They talked about Tokyo and the tutoring center and Danny's upcoming transfer applications. Lily regaled them with detailed descriptions of every temple and toy store they'd visited. Danny and Daisy bickered affectionately about whether he was actually studying or just playing video games during his grounding. About halfway through the meal, Danny looked at Ethan directly and said, "So you're dating my sister?" "I am." "You better not hurt her." "Danny!" Daisy's mortification was instant. "You can't just—" "I can and I will." Danny's voice was calm but firm. "She's been taking care of me my whole life. Someone needs to look out for her for once." Ethan met the younger man's eyes steadily. "I have no intention of hurting her, but I appreciate you saying it anyway. She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her," Danny corrected. "I'm just making sure you know what you're getting into. Daisy's stubborn and proud, and she won't let you help her even when she needs it." "I'm sitting right here," Daisy said, "and I'm not that stubborn." Both Danny and Ethan looked at her skeptically. Even Lily giggled. "Okay, fine, I'm stubborn, but it's a good quality." Daisy reached over and grabbed her brother's hand. "Danny, it's okay. I can take care of myself." "I know, but it's nice to have backup." Danny squeezed her hand, then let go. "All right, corporate man, you passed the intimidating younger brother test." "I didn't realize there was a test." "There's always a test. You just didn't know you were taking it." The conversation moved on to lighter topics, but Ethan found himself grateful for Danny's protectiveness. It meant Daisy had someone in her corner, someone who would call Ethan out if he started treating this relationship like another business venture to be optimized. After breakfast, they walked to the nearby playground where Lily wanted to show off her improved bike riding skills. Danny challenged her to races, while Ethan and Daisy sat on the swings, pushing themselves lazily back and forth. "This is nice," Daisy said, watching Lily and Danny circle the parking lot. "Weird, but nice." "Weird how?" "Weird like, I never imagined my life could look like this. With someone who actually gets what I'm trying to do and doesn't resent the parts of my life that are complicated." "You mean Danny?" "I mean all of it. The jobs, the neighborhood, the constant balancing act. Most guys I've dated got tired of being third priority behind my brother and my work." She glanced at him. "You're different." "Because I have my own complicated life. I understand what it means to have obligations that can't be compromised." Ethan slowed his swing until he was almost still. "And because I don't want you to give up anything that matters to you. I just want to be part of it." "You're really good at saying the right things." "I've had practice, built a company partly on knowing what to say in negotiations." "This isn't a negotiation. No, it's better. It's two people choosing to figure things out together instead of trying to win concessions from each other." He reached over and took her hand. "How's that for saying the right thing?" Daisy laughed. "Pretty good. You might have a future in this relationship stuff." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their respective charges play. The playground was filling up with weekend families, and Ethan recognized several faces from previous Saturdays. People waved or nodded in greeting, accepting his presence here as something normal now, rather than noteworthy. "I have a confession," Daisy said eventually. "I looked you up after that first bicycle ride." "Yeah?" "Yeah, I Googled you, read about your company, saw your net worth estimate, learned about the merger you were racing to." She swung slightly, her feet dragging in the dirt. "I almost didn't come to the taco truck that night because I got scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that you were out of my league, that this was some weird fascination you'd get over once you remembered who you were and where you came from." She looked at him. "I'm still a little scared of that, if I'm honest." "I'm scared too," Ethan admitted. "Scared that I'll mess this up by being who I've always been. The guy who tries to solve every problem with resources and planning. Scared that I won't be enough for you because I don't know how to just be without fixing." "So we're both terrified." "Seems like it, but we're doing it anyway." "Seems like that too." Daisy smiled and squeezed his hand. We're either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm that worked better than either of them expected. Ethan learned Daisy's schedule and found pockets of time when they could be together. Early morning coffees before her shift started, lunch breaks at the taco truck, evenings after Lily went to bed when they could talk on the phone for hours about nothing and everything. He stopped trying to fix everything. When Daisy mentioned her bike needed new tires, he didn't offer to buy her a new bike. He asked which shop she trusted and offered to go with her, then watched her negotiate a fair price with the mechanic, with the expertise of someone who'd been maintaining her own equipment for years. When Danny got rejected from his first-choice university, Ethan didn't offer to make calls or donations. He listened while Daisy worried, offered reassurance when she needed it, and celebrated with them when Danny got accepted to his second choice with a partial scholarship. And slowly, carefully, he introduced Daisy to parts of his world. Not the fancy restaurants or charity galas, but the real moments. Lily's school performances where Daisy sat with him in the audience and cheered louder than anyone. Weekend mornings in the penthouse where they made pancakes together while Lily and occasionally Danny created chaos in the kitchen. Board game nights that devolved into arguments about rules and victory dances when Lily won. Daisy met Jennifer, who took one look at them together and told Ethan privately that she'd never seen him happier. She met Marcus, who admitted he'd been rooting for them since the day of the bicycle rescue. She even met some of Ethan's board members at a company picnic, charming them with her directness and refusal to be intimidated by their wealth. And Ethan became part of Daisy's world in return. He started volunteering at the tutoring center on Saturday afternoons, helping kids with math homework, and discovering he was actually pretty good at explaining complex concepts in simple terms. He got to know the neighborhood, the good restaurants, the trusted mechanics, the families who'd lived there for generations. He met Daisy's friends from the coffee shop and the delivery service, people who'd known her for years and were initially suspicious of the rich boyfriend but gradually accepted him when he kept showing up and genuinely seemed to care. He learned the rhythms of her life, the early mornings and late nights, the constant juggling of schedules, the small victories and setbacks that came with working multiple jobs. 3 months in, on a Saturday evening at the playground, Ethan made a decision he'd been thinking about for weeks. I want to do something, he told Daisy while they watched Lily teach Miguel some new bike trick she'd learned. And I need you to hear me out before you say no. Daisy's eyes narrowed suspiciously. This sounds like the start of you trying to fix something. Maybe. But I think it's a fix that makes sense. He took a breath. I want to create a scholarship fund for kids from your neighborhood who want to go to college but can't afford it. Not a huge thing, not my name plastered everywhere. Just a fund that helps people like Danny get opportunities they've earned. Ethan, before you argue, hear me out. This isn't about you. This is about me realizing that I have resources I'm not using for anything meaningful. The merger went through, the company's worth more than ever, and I'm just accumulating wealth for the sake of accumulating it. I want to do something that matters. And you think a scholarship fund is the answer? I think it's an answer. One that doesn't require you to change anything about your life or accept anything from me personally. This would be separate. A foundation managed by people from the community who know which kids need help and deserve chances. Daisy was quiet, considering. You've really thought about this. I've been thinking about it since the day you refused my $500 and told me to help someone else instead. Ethan watched Miguel execute a wobbly wheelie while Lily cheered. These kids deserve better than I got handed to me. I was lucky, smart, sure, but also lucky to be born into circumstances that let me use that intelligence. Not everyone gets that luck. This could even the odds a little. A little, Daisy said softly. You know it won't solve everything, right? That poverty is more complicated than just access to education? I know, but education is a start. And it's something I can actually do without overstepping or trying to save people who don't need saving. He looked at her. Is this okay? Am I being the guy who tries to throw money at problems again? Or is this different? Daisy thought about it for a long moment. Then she said, It's different, because you're not doing it to make yourself feel better or to fix me specifically. You're doing it because you've seen a real need and you have the means to help. That's not charity. That's community investment. So you're okay with it? I'm okay with it. Actually, I think it's a great idea. She smiled. But I have one condition. Name it. The foundation needs a board. Local people who understand this neighborhood and can make decisions about who gets funding.
I want to be on that board. You want to help decide who gets scholarships? I want to make sure this doesn't become some feel-good rich person project that doesn't actually help the people who need it most. I want to keep you honest. Daisy's expression was serious. Can you handle having me tell you when you're being an idiot about who deserves help? I would be insulted if you didn't. Ethan pulled her closer. Actually, I was hoping you'd want to be involved. You know these kids better than anyone. Then yeah, let's do it. Daisy leaned her head on his shoulder.
Look at us, being all philanthropic and partnershipy. Is partnershipy a word? It is now. They sat like that while the sun set over the playground, planning a future that looked nothing like what either of them had imagined 6 months ago. A future where wealth and poverty, privilege and struggle existed in the same space without one trying to overwhelm the other. 6 months after that first bicycle ride, Ethan proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or on a beach at sunset. He proposed at the playground on a regular Saturday afternoon, with Lily and Danny as witnesses and Miguel cheering in the background. He didn't have a ring yet. They'd pick that out together, something simple that Daisy could actually wear while working without worrying about it. He just had words, spoken from the heart with the kind of directness Daisy had taught him to value.
I love you, he said, kneeling in the dirt beside the swings. I love your stubbornness and your pride and the way you make me want to be better without ever asking me to be different. I love how you see the world and how you've taught me to see it too. I want to spend the rest of my life learning from you and supporting you and being your partner in every way that matters. Daisy was crying, of course. She seemed to cry at all their important moments. You're doing this here? She asked through tears. At the playground? This is where we figured out how to be together. Seemed appropriate. Ethan smiled. Also, Lily threatened to tell you herself if I waited any longer. I did, Lily called from where she and Danny were pretending not to watch. He's been carrying that speech around in his pocket for 3 weeks. 2 weeks, Ethan corrected. I wrote it in Tokyo, during the merger meetings. You wrote a proposal speech during business negotiations? The merger wasn't as interesting as figuring out how to ask you to marry me. He took her hands. So what do you say? Want to be terrified together for the rest of our lives? Daisy laughed and cried and pulled him up from the dirt so she could kiss him properly. Yes, absolutely yes. Lily's cheer could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Danny looked embarrassed but pleased. Miguel started a chant of, "Kiss her again,
kiss her again," that the other playground kids quickly joined. And Ethan kissed Daisy again, there in the dirt of a playground in a neighborhood he'd never known existed before. She'd stopped beside his car in traffic and realized that every choice that had led him to this moment, every difficult decision, every setback, every success, had been worth it to end up exactly here. The wedding, when it happened 8 months later, was a perfect reflection of their merged worlds. They held it at the tutoring center, which had been expanded with foundation funds into a proper community center. Ethan wore a suit, Daisy wore a simple dress she'd found at a vintage shop and loved for its history. Lily was the flower girl, taking her duties so seriously that she scattered petals with geometric precision. Danny walked Daisy down the aisle, trying not to cry and failing. The guest list was an unlikely mixture: tech executives and baristas, board members and delivery drivers, wealthy investors, and families from the neighborhood. Gordo catered, because of course he did, serving elevated versions of his street tacos to people who'd never eaten from a food truck before, and people who ate there weekly. During his vows, Ethan said, "You saved my life that morning in traffic. Not just the merger, not just my schedule, but my actual life. You reminded me that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. You taught me that control is an illusion and that the best things in life are the ones you can't plan or buy. I promise to keep learning from you, to support you without trying to save you, and to love you exactly as you are for as long as we both live." Daisy's vows were simpler. You showed up. When I asked you to, when I didn't ask you to, even when I pushed you away because I was scared. You kept showing up and proving that love isn't about fixing or saving or changing people. It's about choosing them every day, despite how hard it is. I promise to keep letting you in, to tell you when you're being an idiot, and to love you through every mistake we both still have to make. They kissed while their unlikely community cheered, and Ethan thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, desperate in traffic, thinking his life was ending because he might miss a meeting. That man had measured success in valuations and acquisitions, in quarterly growth and market dominance. This man measured it in Daisy's smile and Lily's laughter and the community they were building together. In scholarships awarded and kids helped and lives changed in small, accumulating ways. The merger had made him richer. Daisy had made him real.
Years later, when people asked how they met, Ethan and Daisy would tell the story together. The traffic jam, the bicycle, the questionable tacos, the playground where everything changed. Lily, older now but still dramatic, would insist she knew they were meant to be from the very beginning. Danny, successful in his own career but still protective of his sister, would joke about being the most suspicious best man in history. And sometimes, on Saturday mornings, they'd all go back to that playground. Ethan and Daisy would sit on the swings while Lily taught younger kids to ride bikes with the same patient encouragement Daisy had once shown her. The community center would run programs throughout the week, funded by a foundation that bore no one's name but helped dozens of kids every year. The scholarship fund had expanded beyond their neighborhood, helping hundreds of students afford college, many of whom came back to volunteer and pay forward the opportunity they'd been given. The tutoring center had a waiting list. The playground had been renovated with community input, keeping its character while making it safer. And through it all, Ethan and Daisy navigated their merged life with the same honesty and compromise that had defined them from the start. They argued about money and priorities and how to raise Lily. They made mistakes and apologized and learned from them. They built something that looked nothing like either of their original lives, but felt exactly right for who they were together. Because that morning in traffic hadn't just been about a businessman getting to a meeting or a poor girl helping a stranger. It had been about two people from different worlds discovering that the space between them wasn't a gap to be bridged or a problem to be solved. It was the foundation of something entirely new. A life measured not in dollars or sacrifices, but in moments of genuine connection. In showing up, in choosing each other, again and again, through every difficulty and joy. In the end, that's all love ever is, showing up, staying honest, and trusting that together you can build something neither of you could have created alone. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it starts with a bicycle ride through the hidden streets of a city you thought you knew, given by a stranger brave enough to stop and offer help to someone who desperately needed it.